Chapter 247. Lu Fei really wanted to see the look on Qin Guang's face when he found out that he actually finished 151. Maybe he would be a little happy and then he would pat himself on the shoulder and compliment him. First of all, I have to thank you, an excellent beautiful agent, for my achievements today. Lu Fei stood in the crowd and watched the second group of racers slowly enter the queue. These people almost lost the courage to race. Lu Fei was even more proud. She was so fantasizing that the corners of her mouth were about to blossom. That's right, the reason why he can run so smoothly is because I've put in so much effort to be at his beck and call for him. I've also contributed a lot to this. Being able to make history with him, it was worth it to throw away all the work in the company and come here with him. Speaking of which, there was probably a lot of backlog of documents waiting to be dealt with in the past 3 days. I'll go through them tomorrow. If there was really something important, the vice president would always call me. Lu Fei happily waited for Qin Guang's call. She was ready to tell him the new record he had created in an exaggerated tone. She had practiced it at least 10 times in her mind. In the end, he waited for nearly an hour before Qin Guang's call finally came. What? You're already back at the hotel? Lu Fei was so angry that she almost smashed her phone. This guy is getting more and more outrageous. After he met up with the SUV that was waiting for him, he directly threw the GTR to the people arranged by Uncle Cheng. He directly drove the SUV back to the hotel. What this guy meant was that he was completely letting others do the work. I'm a person who is worth hundreds of thousands of yuan per minute. I accompanied you from thousands of miles away just to race with you. I wanted to leave my name in the history books with you. In the end, you left a delicate beauty like me to stay on the mountain track to help you pick out the car. You went back to the hotel by yourself. This is outrageous. When Qin Guang heard that Lu Fei was actually angry, he quickly laughed. Aya, it's not my fault. You know that I'm a student. My studies are the most important. Physics and chemistry is really hard to learn. If I don't seize the time to make up for it, I'll have to kneel on the ground during the makeup exam. Let me tell you, the failure rate of this course is as high as 40%. The retake rate is also as high as 20%. It's practically hell mode for us science students. Hearing him speak so seriously, Lu Fei really couldn't continue to criticize him. However, she was a little speechless. She said angrily, "You're the racing god of this generation. Can't you be a little more promising? It was nothing more than failing a course. What are you afraid of?" Qin Guang panicked and said, "Please don't say that. You don't know that I failed 3 subjects in my freshman year. When I went home, I was almost beaten to death. My parents' mixed doubles was so scary that I couldn't bear to look back on it. Oh, my mother was also in good health at that time." Just like that, Lu Fei hung up the phone gloomily. The god of racing was actually a college student who was afraid of failing a course. This setting was simply ridiculous. Unfortunately, I couldn't refute him. Thinking about it carefully, Lu Fei was a little envious of Qin Guang. She envied that he could be beaten and scolded by his parents. No, why am I thinking about these useless things? Back to this scammer, he felt that the root of his problem was that he didn't pay enough attention to the car racing competition. Otherwise, how could the exam be more attractive than coming here to beat up the local tycoons and divide their wealth? He loves money so much. Let me think about it and go back to give him a big surprise. What? How much did you say I've earned so far? Can you say it again? Did I hear you correctly? Qin Guang's mouth was wide open. He looked at Lu Fei, who was asking for praise in front of him. He couldn't say a word for a long time. Just now, Lu Fei suddenly rushed into the bedroom with a loudspeaker in her hand. She loudly shouted beside his head, "Let me tell you a piece of good news. The Lamborghini that you locked today is a limited edition. It's worth 10 million. Including the prize money, you've earned a total of 28,500,000 yuan. Are you happy? When you were seriously reading, I helped you earn so much money. How are you going to thank me?" Then Lu Fei turned her head and saw the window that Qin Guang didn't have time to minimize. That's right, it was the Dota 2 game interface. Well, he was actually just tired from reading the courseware just now. His hands were itchy, so he opened the app to watch the battle and get some refreshment. Then he accidentally clicked on matchmaking, and even more so, he successfully queued in an instant. Then he accidentally chose a sword saint, and in the end he accidentally dealt 80 blows in 10 minutes. Oh, and his current kill count was 8/0/0. 8 kills, no assists. Pure natural human-headed dog, no additives. You bastard. You keep saying that you're reading but you actually play games behind my back. And it's Dota. Our friendship has come to an end. From now on we're no longer friends. Your 28,500,000 yuan will be my compensation for my mental damage. Goodbye. Lu Fei pretended to be furious and turned to walk out. Instantly Qin Guang bounced up from his seat and roared, "Holy shit! 28,500,000 yuan. Lu Fei, wait. Qin Guang rushed forward and grabbed her shoulder. Lu Fei didn't even turn her head and waved her hand domineeringly. Don't call my name. Since the beginning of chaos, Luo Go and Knife Pig have been irreconcilable enemies. The next time we meet you and I will be enemies. Our eyes will burn with hatred. Take care of yourself." After spending about half an hour, Qin Guang calmed down the traumatized Lu Fei and signed a series of humiliating treaties, finally obtaining Lu Fei's forgiveness. Among them were things like Owl was 10 times more fun than Dota 2, Owl's character design was cuter, Dota 2's style was dark and he would play a round of Owl with her tomorrow. Speaking of which, how did it suddenly become more than 28 million out of the blue? Didn't I only play 3 matches? After signing, Qin Guang finally had the chance to talk business with Lu Fei. Lu Fei laughed. The third round's prize is 2 million. Your prize is a total of 5 million. It's 5,100,000 yuan, thank you. *CK off. The first day's Aston Martin, the price of a car that landed in China is around 3 million. The rich guy who has become your hardcore fan is also willing to spend money and invested a few million into the modifications. In the end it runs like a pile of *T. I estimate this car to be worth around 5 million. The second car, while normally He Tianjia would not fall to the bottom 4 in the second round. He gave you a big gift. Now that his Viper is no longer on sale in China, it is very valuable as a collector's item. It's worth around 4 to 5 million. He invested more than 5 million in his modifications, so the car is worth 9 million. Today I'm dying of laughter. There is actually someone who can drive a Lamborghini LP750 in the curve races, and he actually made it to the third round. And it's a limited edition. You have to thank him when you have the chance in the future. This car is worth 10 million. *CK. Let the old man drink some water to calm down. Over the past few days, Qin Guang had been running around with his head down. He had even left the selection of vehicles to Lu Fei. In any case, he only allowed her to pick the expensive ones. As for the specific car, he only asked for a rough estimate. Today, after a rough calculation, he realized that he could not stay calm anymore. He counted with his fingers and gulped down a mouthful of water. He turned and stared at Lu Fei. "You mean I only ran for 3 days and I became a standard multimillionaire?" Lu Fei nodded. "That's right. Ha ha. I'm dying of laughter. I remember some time ago when I told my dad that I earned 2 million. At that time his eyes rolled back and he fainted from shock. Look, I'm so calm. In the face of 28,500,100 yuan, my expression did not change at all. Ha! Qin Guang, what's wrong with you? Qin Guang, wake up." Old Master Guang collapsed on his back without a word. In 3 days he went from being penniless, with his family in debt, his mother seriously ill, and a tragic, bankrupt second-generation rich man with a deficit of millions of yuan. He turned into a tycoon with nearly 30 million in assets. Old Master Guang could not stay calm at all. He would not have known if he had not calculated, but once he did, he was shocked. Fainting straight away was a form of self-protection for humans in the face of intense stimulation. Qin Guang's self-protection was very good. Chapter 248. After a long time, Qin Guang woke up, but he still couldn't calm down. "Tell me, how am I going to spend so much money? Can I spend it all in my lifetime?" Lu Fei only laughed. "Of course you can. It won't even be enough to buy a Bugatti Veyron. I'm not a country bumpkin like you. I can split a penny into 2 and spend it. Who would buy that kind of thing to squander money? I've been messing around with the Rena recently, and I haven't been willing to spend money on a big maintenance. I'll spend 2,000 on a comprehensive maintenance." With Lu Fei's interruption, the game completely collapsed. He couldn't even continue reading. After Lu Fei left, Qin Guang lay on the bed, tossing and turning, his mind full of thoughts. He used to be so eager to become a rich man, but one day when a huge amount of wealth fell from the sky, he realized that all the psychological preparations he had made before were useless. His mind was filled with the terrifying figure of 5 million yuan. Apart from that, he could imagine that there was an even more terrifying amount of wealth waiting for him. There were still 4 days until the competition. By the time he got all 7 cars, Qin Guang couldn't imagine how terrifying his total wealth would be. The old man is still inexperienced after all. Look at how calm Lu Fei is. She doesn't even bat an eyelid when faced with a matter of tens of millions. I still have a long way to go and I still have a lot of experience to learn. However, the foundation of all of this is built on the foundation of continuous winning. No matter what, I can't fail. He gritted his teeth and got out of bed. He turned on the computer again, but this time, it wasn't to play games or read the courseware. Well, as a multimillionaire, shouldn't he first learn about politics and how to do business? An hour later, he decisively fell back on the bed and fell asleep. Before he fell asleep, he told himself that business was not something that could be learned just by surfing the internet. The next morning, it was already past 10 in the morning when he woke up. It was rare for her to sleep in. She tossed and turned until 2 o'clock in the morning before falling asleep. When he walked out of the bedroom, he saw Lu Fei taking out her laptop and fiddling with something on the screen. She crossed her legs, put her left hand to the side and fiddled with the mouse with her right hand. Her expression was exceptionally focused as she dragged the mouse and tapped it from time to time. Qin Guang quietly moved closer and took a look. It was actually a document from Lu Fei Company. Holy shit. An opportunity. It was time to learn how billionaires did business. He didn't interrupt her and even forgot to remind her that her family's trade secrets had been leaked. Qin Guang silently stood behind her and looked at the documents displayed on the laptop. This seemed to be the office management system of her company. The contents of these documents were generally things reported by various departments. Lu Fei browsed through the documents very quickly. One by one, she quickly flipped through the documents on the screen. Then she ticked off the approve or disapprove button below. There were also some reports. After Lu Fei read them line by line, she dragged them to another folder. This folder's title was also very simple: Read. Just like that, Qin Guang spent 2 hours looking at it. Finally, Lu Fei stretched and said to herself, "I've only been gone for 3 days and you've already left me with so many things. I'm exhausted. What use do I have, you guys?" Then she turned around and saw Qin Guang. She exclaimed, "What are you doing? You're so sneaky. You're scaring me to death." Qin Guang chuckled. "I accidentally saw your company's trade secrets. Don't kill me." Lu Fei spat. "How is this confidential? It's just some regular documents. How long have you been reading them?" Qin Guang put up 2 fingers. 2 hours. Then his stomach growled. He hadn't had breakfast since he woke up in the morning. Lu Fei glared at him angrily again. "What? You want to learn how to do business so quickly? All right. Let's talk while we eat." Qin Guang decisively took on the job of receiving lunch from the waiter. He eagerly filled the table with all kinds of food. Then he even more enthusiastically picked up a piece of cabbage and put it in Lu Fei's bowl. "You used your brain too much just now. Nourish yourself. Damn. You're too purposeful." Lu Fei was defeated by his eagerness. Qin Guang scratched his head awkwardly. "I'm just anxious. I'm going to be rich soon, but I'm still completely clueless about doing business. I can't just deposit money in the bank and earn interest, can I? I have to at least understand a little bit about how to use this money. I'm impressed. Let me put it this way. According to my current estimation, if you really win all 7 rounds, you will probably get a total of about 80 million yuan in the end. However, the best way to use these cars is to auction them on the spot. Then you can hand them over to Uncle Qing to help you deal with them. The final amount of money you can get is around 70 million. Qin Guang nodded. He completely understood what Lu Fei said. "That's right, it's 70 million. How do I spend it? I have no idea. 70 million is just a drop in the bucket. If you don't pretend, we can still be friends." "Don't pretend. I have it. Can we get down to business? I saw you handling the documents just now. You really want to learn how to manage a business. I was really caught off guard when you suddenly got so much money. I saw you handling the documents just now. You're really decisive in handling the documents. I think there's a document about a subsidiary company applying for 50 million for technological transformation, right? How did you approve it in a blink of an eye? There's another document about purchasing some foreign equipment. The price is not cheap either. I think it's more than 70 million. You approved it too. Also, there's a job transfer, a project to develop a new product and a derivative product. You handled all of these in a blink of an eye. That's too fast. How can you think of so many things in your head? Don't you feel dizzy? Why didn't I notice that you're so smart? Lu Fei, alright, I'll stop joking. I really admire you in this aspect. I think you're really good. Can you teach me? Qin Guang had always been a person who loved to learn. Lu Fei knocked his head with her chopsticks. If you learn from me, you'll lose everything in minutes. What do you mean? Am I that weak? Chapter 249. It's not that you're so weak, it's that you can't afford to play like me. Do you know, although I decided to come to Xianxia with you in a hurry, I have already delegated part of the authority before I left. The documents that are submitted to me are all decisions that can only be made by the highest level of the company. Before these documents were sent to me, do you know how many people have already gone through them? A company is a huge structure. The so-called brain is not just me, not to mention that I am only in charge of the subsidiary companies of the company. You see me making a simple decision whether to approve or not. In fact, before this, many people have been racking their brains for the same thing. For example, the 50 million investment in technical transformation is a necessary requirement for the country to promote environmental protection in the new 2 years. Our previous production wastewater treatment level can't meet the new standards, and the need for technical transformation has reached an urgent level. It must be implemented as soon as possible, otherwise, we will have to stop production for rectification. We have already done a long negotiation in the early stage, and the small and medium tests of the Scientific Research Unit have also passed the acceptance inspection, proving that this set of process plan is feasible, so of course I directly approved it. Also, the 70 million purchase is because a new technology has just appeared abroad which can greatly increase the output and quality of our products. If it is done well, it will increase the annual profit by hundreds of millions, so of course I directly approved it. Lu Fei talked until the dishes on the table were completely cold. Qin Guang listened with a face full of admiration. He really didn't expect that this seemingly retarded big sister, okay, she is really his retarded fan, actually has so many things in her head. Although every decision had gone through layers of scrutiny before it reached her, as the so-called highest authority, she also knew the key links involved in every decision like the back of her hand. The most amazing thing is that she is very clear about the possible impact of every decision. Damn, doing business is so difficult, I'd better just take the interest. This was the conclusion that Qin Guang came to. Lu Fei knocked his head again. You're giving up just like that? Let me put it this way, you look like I know everything, but in fact if you want to carry out the specific details, I don't know anything. For example, this product called A Chinjikant is the flagship product of one of my subsidiary companies, but in fact I don't know how this thing is produced and how many links there are in the production process. I don't want to understand it either. Even if I occasionally ask and temporarily understand, I won't study it in detail. It's impossible for me to understand every detail like the production manager of this branch company. As a decision maker, it is very difficult to manage such a huge company. A person's energy is limited, so I can only let myself be in a situation where I know but don't know. I only need to control the situation that I should control. As for the rest, I will let others deal with it. If someone else messes up, I'll hold him accountable. If he can't bear the responsibility, I'll replace him with someone else and find someone who can bear the responsibility. It's as simple as that. So, doing business is really difficult, but it is also very simple. It is nothing more than to constantly make decisions. It is the same for people. Qin Guang was puzzled again. Then how do you know that your decisions will always be right? Of course, I can't always be right, but I can guarantee that there will always be more right decisions than wrong ones. Other than that, I still have a big company, right? If I make a mistake, there will always be a sober person who can remind me. If most of the decisions approved by the company's leaders are wrong, then I can only blame it on my bad luck. If there is a mistake, everyone will bear it together. But my family business is big and a small mistake will not be enough. Because what I control is only a small part of a huge company. If this part is broken, I can still pull resources from other places to fix it. You can't do it. 70 million will be gone in a minute. Qin Guang vaguely understood what Lu Fei said. Actually, in my opinion, people who do business can be roughly divided into 3 types. The first is the kind of people like our parents, who rely purely on the accumulation of life experience to build a team step by step, and then use this team as the foundation to expand their business. These people, I would sum them up as experiential businessmen. The other type is like Tang Xiaokai, who relies on their extraordinary brains and courage to rush into the financial market. They have a wealth of theoretical knowledge, and even more so, they have the wisdom to work together. I call these types of people technical businessmen. Then which type are you? Qin Guang asked. Lu Fei laughed. I am the third type. Intuitive. After thinking about it, I think I'll just be the intuitive type. Do you think my intuition comes so easily? I'm different from Zhong Bai and the others. I've been involved in business affairs since I was 16 years old in high school. Over the years, I've seen all kinds of people and encountered all kinds of things. Whether it's business negotiations, technical difficulties of the company, or even the coming and going of some old officials, I've seen a lot of them. Although I am only 25 years old, strictly speaking, I have been learning business for 9 years. That is why I dare to say that I am the intuitive type. Since last year, my family divided a branch company and let me be the head. Amazing. Qin Guang's face was full of admiration. But from last year to this year, my branch company has lost more than 500 million. Pfft. Qin Guang really wanted to strangle her. Damn, this woman's words are reasonable, but in the end I still suffer losses. I feel like I am learning oil painting from a blind person and music from a deaf person. Well, although he was cursing Lu Fei in his heart, Qin Guang had to admit that what she said was reasonable. The knowledge of doing business was indeed like this. The human brain was not a computer, and business was a social knowledge. It was impossible to simply rely on some so-called mathematical formulas or economic principles to understand the mysteries of doing business. Otherwise, the richest people in the world would not be businessmen, but those mathematicians or economists who did research. Previously, he tried to learn business by reading books or reading biographies of rich people, but it was a bit stupid. An experienced businessman's idea of success, to put it bluntly, is the accumulation of life experience. When faced with one decision after another, always be able to make the more correct decision. This is easy to say but difficult to do. As for a technical businessman like Tang Xiaokai, it is even more difficult than an experienced businessman. A technical businessman can be said to be the sublimation of an experienced businessman. On the basis of the experience brought by losses and setbacks, he also has the same rich theoretical knowledge. He can penetrate the surface to understand the essence of the market economy, which allows him to be like a fish in water in the US stock market and investment market. But to copy Tang Xiaokai's successful experience to China? Aha, he can teach him how to be an adult in a minute. For a so-called intuitive type like Lu Fei, it is even more profound. On the surface, she is cheating her father by losing 500 million a year. But in other words, to be able to maintain such a large company and only lose 500 million a year, she has actually exceeded the requirements of her family. She has the theoretical knowledge that young people are passionate about, and she also has the experience that an experienced businessman needs. In the future, she will follow the path that her family arranged for her, and walk on the throne of a strong woman in the business world. This is not difficult for her because from the beginning to the end, there will be a team to assist her, and as she goes further, the team that assists her will become stronger and stronger, and the level will become higher and higher. This is an advantage that a rich second generation like her is born with, and it is not something that can be envied. But when Qin Guang put the same thinking in place of himself, it does not work at all. He is rich but not rich enough, and he is not a real rich second generation. The most successful experience of his family in business is his father's hot pot restaurant, and that is all. Of course, after today's conversation, Qin Guang did not end up with nothing. At least compared to many people, he has a too perfect and too easy start. 70 million in cash. That is something that many people can't even dream of in a few lifetimes. Instead of being fearful before he even made a move, he might as well try the thought process of an experiential businessman like what Lu Fei said. He would first find an opportunity for himself and create a platform where he could continuously make decisions. That way, he would be able to accumulate the experience he needed. In addition, perhaps he needs a team? The comprehensive wisdom of a team is always stronger than the thinking of an individual. Of course, a truly successful person such as little brother Ma or brother Yun, their team is strong, but their individual decision-making ability is even more outstanding. A person with perfect decision-making ability and a similarly comprehensive team can truly become the person who drives the tide of the economy. Well, the old man has no chance in the short term, so I will take the interest first. How about I take out 100,000 yuan to open a lottery shop? Look, the opportunity to make a decision is coming. Should I open the lottery shop in the pedestrian street of the school, or in Winxing town outside the school? Should I sell sports lottery or welfare lottery? After giving himself a hard slap, Qin Guang felt like a fool. Forget it, let's use the other method that Lu Fei mentioned at the end. What I need the most is an idiotic way to make money. Put the money in the venture capital market and then spread the net like a fool, find a suitable company to invest in the venture capital market, split the 70 million into several or dozens of portions, and put them into different egg baskets. If one side fails, the other side can always make up for the loss. When I can't make up my mind when I invest, I can ask Lu Fei or Tang Xiaokai, these smart people who are more experienced than me. I can at least give them face, right? Because we're friends? Then, as long as the general direction of the investment keeps up with the trend, and let my money climb up along with the entire market, unless I am so unlucky that I can't even drink water and get wiped out, I can still make the appreciation of my assets outpace the bank interest. That is enough. Qin Guang looked at the heavenly holy grail in his hand regretfully again. Really has not done anything for a long time. How I wish I could let this godly artifact give me a shot that can turn me into a business superman in a second. Chapter 250. Unfortunately, it was different from physical training, and it was also different from simple language studies or games. What business required was a person's comprehensive thinking ability. Apart from that, there was also the ability to be extremely calm when faced with decisions. At the same time, there was also the ability to lead a team. Doing business required a person's state of mind to be improved in all aspects. Seeing that Ling Tian couldn't handle such a profound subject like business, only God knew when he would be able to upgrade this unlucky godly weapon to the 3rd level, Cloud Elephant Sky. Qin Guang maintained his disdain for this heavenly holy grail, but he completely forgot that the truly awesome people such as the founder who must die, Mark Zuckerberg, had already founded this social network that was worth hundreds of billions of dollars at the same age as him. Trash. What's the use of you? Qin Guang tossed the heavenly holy grail into the sky and caught it. Being free of desires, that was how confident he was. He would kneel and beg Lioli for mercy when he needed her help. Isn't it just money? Is there a need for you to be so vexed? You don't have to worry about this. This Empress has covered it for you. If you throw another cup and affect this Empress gaming, I'll kill you. At this moment, Lioli's voice suddenly rang out in Qin Guang's heart. He finally appeared again. You have covered it for me? What do you mean? Gaming? What game is she playing? Why do I have a bad feeling about this? Qin Guang held the cup with both hands and shouted in his heart. What do you mean? Come out and have a chat. Nothing much. This Empress has been surfing the internet every day and my understanding of your world has increased by leaps and bounds. Your internet is really interesting. I can direct the world without stepping out of my house. Recently I've read many articles on Jihu and feel that I've learned enough to leave the mountain. Oh no, leave the mountain. Lioli. I want to be the best in everything I do. I'm number 1 in gaming. My investment foresight definitely won't be any worse than that Warren Buffett in your world. Just leave your money to this Empress to manage. Don't you think that it's pretty cool for a divine emperor to lower himself to be Qin Guang's butler? From what she said, it seemed that she was eyeing my money. How many articles did she read on Jihu? Financial manager? Damn it. Bring your sister's feelings. If it was a reliable god emperor, I would beg him to take care of it even if I had to kneel down. But I don't trust you from the bottom of my heart because of your character. Hey, don't be like this. You don't have to bother yourself with such trivial matters. Let me do it myself. Don't stand on ceremony with me. After all, you are my savior and it is my duty to help you solve your problems. Don't say any more. I've already made up my mind. You just have to win the money back. I guarantee that I'll give you 10 times the amount in a year. If not, I'll change your money back. Recently I've been playing a lot of games. Whenever the opponent queues up against me, I'll instantly quit. It's getting a little boring. I'm looking for something else to do. Don't you dare deprive me of my fun. Anyway, you can't stop me, right? After Liuli said this, she went silent again. No matter how much Qin Guang called out to her in his mind, it was of no use. Qin Guang threw away the cup in disappointment. He silently calculated that he should transfer 4 million to Wang Qing first to pay off his debt. If he won the money tonight, he would transfer it all to his dad's account. He would first help his dad pay off part of the court's judgment. As for the battle to protect the car in the next few days, if he thought about it carefully, it wouldn't be a big deal if he didn't participate. With a sense of loss, he took an afternoon nap on his bed. After that, Qin Guang gave his father a call. Since he decided to transfer the money tonight, it was better to give him a heads up before he fainted again. After chatting with Qin Guoli for a while, Qin Guang learned about the situation in Wujing City. After the donor arrived with Tang Ying's help, she was quickly arranged into a hospital room. Now that a few days had passed, both Feng Rong and the donor's physical condition were under control. The time for the operation had been completely set, which was 9 o'clock in the morning 4 days later. In short, Dad, you don't have to worry about the money. Your son is no longer the same as before. Tonight I will transfer a large sum of money over. When Mom is fully recovered, you can find a suitable time to pay off the money awarded by the court. It's not a good idea to keep owing it. Although there is something fishy about this case, we can't win. Even if I will find out the details of the case sooner or later, we should stop worrying about it now. Qin Guang said carefully for fear of scaring Qin Guoli. If it were another time, Qin Guang would have to fork out a few million to pay off the debt that he didn't want to acknowledge. There was no way. But now, first, it was too easy and enjoyable to make money in the past few days. Second, there was the completely deceptive Emperor of the Azure who was eyeing the large sum of money. Just like what she said, if this woman really wanted to do something, there was no way to prevent it. Based on the principle that it was better to fill the hole first than to throw away the money. After paying off the debt, at least there was a bubble. Zai Xiaoguang, don't say any more. I understand. It's been hard on you. Alright, how was the effect of the soup last time? Recently, I asked your uncle about an even more powerful prescription in his hometown. You're still young. Bam. Qin Guang decisively hung up the phone. Jiang Yage was too much of a scapegoat. He didn't know what kind of terrifying human-shaped juicer his dad would imagine a beautiful young celebrity to be. Now that he thought about it, he transferred 2 million yuan to him last time and he came up with a vitality recovery soup. This time he was going to transfer 4 million yuan to him. Could he come up with a vitality recovery soup that was 4 times more powerful? Would I still be able to live after eating it? Would it be too much of a supplement? Should I stick to rubbing it every day from tonight onwards and use up some of my vitality in advance? So conflicted, so painful, so flustered. Should I secretly change to a sock puppet and apologize under Jiang Yage's Weibo? He felt a little apologetic in his heart. This complicated and uneasy feeling lasted until that night, when Qin Guang sat in his car and prepared for the final round of the race. After 4 consecutive days of competition, those who were able to stand out from the 64 cars and become one of the top 8 were undoubtedly the best of the best in this year's race, whether it was the level of the driver or the performance of the car. Among them were the previous champion, A Yuan, and the McLaren P1, which had an eye-catching performance in the first round, almost catching up to Qin Guang's record. In the second round, the Subaru Winged Leopard WXT, who had watched from the sidelines against Qin Guang and He Tianzhao, also performed well. It successfully passed the first round and became one of the finalists. Other than Qin Guang, there was another GTR in the final round. This car was different from Qin Guang's. It was said that it had been shipped from Japan by sea a long time ago, and the entire car was made of pure black technology. Of course, the car participating in this race was not the ordinary version that could be bought on the market, but the real cutting-edge technology of the original manufacturer. In addition, the driver was from the same school as Ryuichi Takahashi, and was considered Ryuichi Takahashi's nephew. The other 3 cars were BMW M4 Renault Alpine, and Corvette C7Z06. Among them, the driver of the BMW M4 was a driver who had just switched from professional rallying to participate in underground racing. The car was configured according to his years of racing experience, and he had invited several engineers from the rallying team to help modify and debug the car. Although his car was not expensive, his ability was not to be underestimated. The Renault Alpine was even more impressive. It was a top driver hired by this company to participate in this race to build momentum for their upcoming new concept car. As for the other Corvette C7Z06, it was equipped with a supercharged CR1 series engine and added a lot of violent modifications. Coupled with an ultra-lightweight body that was also expensive to build, the real combat power of this car far exceeded its price, and it became a real killer on the mountain roads. Looking at Qin Guang being pushed down to number 8 in the ranking, just like in the previous round, Lu Fei frowned. Yesterday's opponents had already targeted him. Today at the final stage, if he won again, it would really be a battle to protect the car. He was afraid that the resistance he would face today would be even greater than yesterday. Once it was a battle to protect the car, the other car kings who participated in the race would have their own pride and dignity, and would certainly not join forces to target him. With his skills that surpassed the limits of human beings, his race might actually become easier. So, today was his biggest challenge. Chapter 251. At this stage of the race, it was completely different from the previous 3 rounds. From the beginning, everyone's eyes were focused on Qin Guang. Who could stop him from dominating this race track would be the only suspense tonight. Wupan Junyao and Takahashi Ryo were surrounded by a few more people. Ferdinand, the king of the rising sun from London. Fallant, the son of sound from Detroit. Speed, the king of rainforest from Brazil. And Felix, the king of diamonds from Africa. This year's race was only halfway through, and 5 of the world's top 10 car kings had already arrived. Among them, Sonic Shack chose to retire from the world because of his old age and stayed in Detroit to manage his modification factory, but for the first time he pushed his son, Farrant, to the front stage. At least in the eyes of other acquaintances, although Farrant was not as calm as Shack, his style and drive were better than his father's. Lu Fei looked at the car kings gathered together from afar, her heart filled with excitement. But she no longer looked up to these people. Instead, she was proud in her heart. The purpose of you coming here is to defeat Lu Fei's master, Qin Guang. This was basically the rhythm of Qin Guang and Lu Fei. When it had nothing to do with racing, Qin Guang's every move was telling Lu Fei that her brother was a loser, constantly refreshing his image in her heart. But once it was involved with racing, Qin Guang's pitiful and fragmented personal image could be restored in Lu Fei's heart in an instant. Moreover, it was constantly elevated by her to the level of a god that could only be looked up to but not approached. It was not only Lu Fei who was so concerned about the existence of these car kings. Even Mr. X on the commentary platform had similarly led the topic to these car kings. This year's racing race was destined to be extraordinary. Yesterday's Yuan ultimately failed to reach the top 3 before reaching the finish line, but rather awkwardly fell to 4th place in his group. But this was not necessarily bad news. At least today he was very happy to be assigned number 1, neatly lining up at the front of the starting line. After experiencing yesterday's fiasco, Yuan had learned from the painful experience. Today he had completely abandoned all the chaotic thoughts in his mind from the beginning. He just stared at the front with full concentration, his mind empty. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was, I have to be faster. Faster than the limit. They had to go all out and maintain the advantage they had at the beginning of the ranking until the last second. Even if he fell halfway, he would not easily admit defeat. Since he was ranked first from the very beginning due to his advantage in ranking, then he should not disappoint this ranking. He should run a good race to his heart's content. Regardless of the outcome, he would not have any regrets. Even if he might become the foil of the GTR's legend, he would not be a withered and dull leaf. At least he would be a bright emerald leaf. There were many people who shared the same mentality as Yuan. Before yesterday, there were still people who tried to compete with this mysterious GTR in terms of speed. However, after seeing the data of the GTR yesterday, anyone with a normal brain could clearly understand one thing. What they needed to face was an ultimate big boss that was even more of a king of cars than the king of cars. Will he be able to leave everyone in the dust today and restart the Xianxia racing car racing competition after 4 years? As the start of the competition approached, the same question appeared in everyone's mind, including the racing king. In Gokyo University, thousands of kilometers away in Zhou Xian's office, a large group of people were gathered in front of Zhou Xian's computer. In the end, Sun Xiaoxuan couldn't hold himself back from whispering about Qin Guang's car racing incident. Although this matter wasn't completely spread throughout the class, Qin Guang's 3 grandsons as well as the counselor Zhou Xian all knew about it. No one knew where Lin Jingwei had found the channel, but he had actually used a very internal method to completely synchronize the live broadcast of Mr. X's commentary that had originally only appeared on the mid-mountain racetrack to Zhou Jingxi's computer. At this time, the 3 grandsons of Lin Jingwei, Sun Xiaoxuan, Gaoya, and Zhou Jingxi were all gathered in front of the computer. Their eyes were wide open and their fists were tightly clenched as they stared at the Mat Jitar waiting quietly at the back of the traffic. Because Qin Guang was wearing the flexible V-shaped mask of the Secret Service, the organizing committee was not worried that it would ruin his idea of hiding his identity. They simply found an unmanned helicopter with a high-definition camera to fly around the GTR and capture every detail of Qin Guang's car and the people inside. If others saw Qin Guang's expression at this time, they might think he was mysterious and domineering, but Lin Jingwei and the others who were familiar with Qin Guang's personality knew that his state was completely different from the real him. "I've never seen Brother Guang look like this. He looks like he's going to eat someone." Bai Fan hit the nail on the head. Sun Xiaoxuan clenched her fists tightly. He was extremely nervous. Why isn't he wearing a safety helmet? I've seen car racing on TV with safety helmets. Lin Jingwei shook his head. This is different. This is an unofficial underground racing competition. The people who participate in this kind of competition are all crazy. Although wearing a helmet can slightly increase the safety factor, it will affect the vision and reduce the overall performance of the driver. I really didn't expect Brother Guang to have such terrifying driving skills after racing for a year and a half. Bai Nyangzi, you're right. With his results so far, he is indeed going to eat someone. After saying this, Lin Jingwei, who knew a little about the inside story, explained the rules of the racing competition in detail to everyone. So, almost everyone is Qin Guang's enemy now? Zhou Jingxi, the counselor, finally couldn't hold it in. At this moment she was no longer a counselor. She was just a girl who was worried about Qin Guang's safety just like everyone else. Lin Jingwei nodded. That's right. He's the enemy of the world. If he can keep winning, he will definitely walk on the altar and become a legend. That's crazy. Xiong'e was shocked. Lin Jingwei nodded. Is that crazy? I can't explain it clearly to you. I can only tell you that up until now, the dominance he has shown in this underground racing competition is more like a main character in a movie or anime. He's a monster. Other than earning tens of millions of yuan, he will also establish a godlike status in the industry. He's indeed Brother Guang. From the first day I met him, I knew he wasn't simple. Otherwise, who could make Lin Jingwei call him boss? Get lost. You make it sound like you're some big shot. Gaoya stomped hard on Lin Jingwei's foot and said angrily, "You're getting cocky." Lin Jingwei howled in pain, but he looked like he was enjoying it. This guy was sincere about Gaoya. No wonder I think this guy looks so handsome with his mask on. He's so handsome. I'm a tiger by Mudanjiang and I'm almost mesmerized by him. He's so mesmerizing. On the other side, Xiong was so scared that he started speaking in northeastern dialect. He stared at the computer screen, his eyes shining. Everyone turned their heads to look at him. They were disgusted by the words that came out of this burly man's mouth. If the match hadn't finally started on the screen, the solemn atmosphere that everyone had gathered with great difficulty would have been blown away by him. As the originally still traffic began to move, Qin Guang's eyes narrowed. His murderous aura seemed to pass through the screen and hit everyone in the face. The current Qin Guang had become a stranger to those who were familiar with him. This was the first time the crowd had seen Qin Guang in a racing car. He was completely different from his usual self. After listening to Lin Jingwei's explanation, the crowd knew that this was the golden age of the global underground racing world, and also Qin Guang's personal battlefield. He used his eyes to tell the crowd that this time he was racing with the determination to succeed or die trying. He was like a peerless warrior who wanted to take the head of the enemy's general from among thousands of soldiers and horses. He would either become a god or fall to hell forever. Chapter 252. The race has begun. Ayuan didn't disappoint. He pulled the power to the maximum in an instant. He didn't let down his first place ranking. His start was smooth but fast. The McLaren P1 worth tens of millions has maximized the advantage of hybrid power, using the super strong current to pull the speed to the maximum in an instant. His start is shockingly fast. Today's protagonist, the invincible god of war who always wears a mask, was full of aggression from the start. He gave the BMW M4 in front of him a lot of pressure. This guy seems to have only shown his true form today. He's about to enter the first turn. Everyone pulled inwards one after another, preparing to slow down for the turn. The data analysis results are out. Today the average speed of the 8 cars has surpassed the 3 cars in front. It's catching up to the speed of the Dark Knight Temptress and the Inferno God of War the day before yesterday. Mr. X was giving his commentary like a machine gun. The scene was so intense from the start that it was heart-wrenching. Sister Lu Fei, is Brother Racing God in a bad mood today? Audiobook suddenly turned his head and asked Lu Fei beside him. Lu Fei shook her head. He's not in a bad mood. He just doesn't want to lose. The organizing committee kept putting him last without saying anything. Maybe he's a little unhappy. He won't lose, right? I feel like his opponent is very strong too. Audiobook asked again. His heart wasn't very determined. Lu Fei shook her head, but her expression was unprecedentedly firm. He won't lose. When he's serious, he's invincible. The stronger his opponent, the stronger he will be. The him I know has no upper limit. At that moment Mr. X suddenly screamed. Because when he was about to cut into the first turn, Qin Guang, who had been at the back since the start, pulled to the outside line. Turning speed of 160. 160. What the hell? If I don't crash, I'll eat *T live. Mr. X finally couldn't help but curse. Then he was slapped in the face. The Renault Alpine was overtaken. There was no way to fight back. Like a black meteor, Qin Guang chose to overtake on the outside line right from the start of the race under everyone's watchful eyes. Then he would continue to overtake other cars along the right side of the sideline. He would exit the corner faster than the others and continue to press forward. He would immediately force the next Corvette C7Z06. Everyone in the audience hoped for a slow-motion replay because they really could not understand what had just happened. They could not understand how someone could pass through that bend at 160 kilometers per hour. This was completely inconsistent with the common sense of physics in everyone's minds. Sister Lu Fei, I don't understand. I personally modified this car piece by piece, so I know better than anyone else how capable it is. But why is it like this? Audiobook looked confused. Lu Fei also shook his head. He recalled the psychological trauma Qin Guang had given everyone when he first used Wang Qing's GTR to reach 150 on Fengquan Mountain a long time ago. At that time everyone felt the same way. They couldn't understand how he did it. Perhaps, up until now, that guy had never been serious about driving? It was a pity that Qin Guang's advance was too fast and too fierce. He did not give the data analysis team the slightest time or opportunity to prepare. In the blink of an eye, he was already behind the Corvette, like a ferocious beast that was about to devour someone. The skills of God were never easily understood by mortals. Knowing how much trauma his actions would cause to others, Qin Guang only laughed. In fact, he had another skill. In less than 5 seconds he sharpened the tip of a pencil into a lifelike rose. That was much more difficult than a 160 km per hour turn. You bunch of ignorant mortals. If I let you know that I once drove an Alto to 400 km per hour on a similar track, would your hearts explode and you die? Just as Lu Fei had guessed, Qin Guang had never really been serious, even when he was running the Fengquan Mountain track. Since today was about whether or not he could start the second round of the race, then he would really go crazy for once. An invisible momentum slowly rose from the madly sprinting Matt GTR. Even through the huge screen, everyone seemed to be able to feel his murderous intent. Before this, he was a man who was close to God, but today he was going to become a real god. There were many people who could drive, but only 1 in 10,000 could race. It was not difficult to drive the car steadily and safely along the road to the destination. But to drive the car to the limit of one's psychology and physiology, to cross the longest route in the shortest time, and to be the first to cross the finish line in the fierce competition, was 10 times or even 100 times more difficult than normal safe driving. The drivers who could compete with Qin Guang today were already the best of the best. Ordinary people would have to control the car's speed to less than 80 km per hour, but they could cross the intense corners at 110 or even 115 kilometers per hour. Among them, the lowest level was still better than Wang Qing from Wujing City. But the difference between Qin Guang and them was complete. People of different realms had different limits. The limit of others was 115 kilometers per hour, which was enough to make them feel like their car was on the verge of completely losing control. But for Qin Guang from the beginning, his limit was not at this level. What could limit him was not his personal limit, but the sudden change of the steering wheel with his right hand, as well as the stability of the car itself. During the high-speed sprint, if someone sat in the passenger seat of Qin Guang, they would find that the movements of his hands and feet were extremely fast. In less than a second he would complete at least 10 operations. Speed up, brake, turn, hand brake, foot brake, speed up again, drift with the accelerator, drift with the handbrake. Other drivers could occasionally do it once or twice, but absolutely no one could do it like him. During the whole process of the sprint, from beginning to end, he could complete such intense continuous control without any flaws. Even with the eyes of the top professional drivers, they could only come to this conclusion. This guy is crazy. Why did Zhou Bai come to such a conclusion when he sat in Qin Guang's car? He didn't understand. Was it because Zhou Bai was too noob? Of course not. It was because Qin Guang's operating frequency was too fast, too violent. Zhou Bai could see it with his naked eyes, but he couldn't see it clearly. He could see it clearly, but he couldn't understand it. His brain couldn't analyze the meaning of Qin Guang's operation. He knew the principle of drifting, but he couldn't understand Qin Guang's technique at all. Others could only go 110 kilometers per hour at most, so how could he go 160 kilometers per hour? When he entered the corner, he was crazily controlling the brake, the accelerator, and the handbrake. His hand was shaking like a Parkinson's disease patient, holding the steering wheel. What was his intention? This is different from what I learned from the books or the drifting that I learned on my own. The same thought appeared in the mind of the driver of the Corvette in front of Qin Guang. To put it simply, it could be summed up in 3 words. King dog. When a junior high school student was faced with a math problem given by a university professor, his performance was no better than that of a primary school student. The only difference between him and Zhou Bai was that Zhou Bai was stunned in the front passenger seat of Qin Guang's car, while the driver of the Corvette was stunned in his own car. Without a trace of defense, he was easily overtaken. Qin Guang's next target, which could be said to be his same kind, another GTR. Takahashi Ryuichi knew his nephew's ability very well. He just shook his head helplessly. Invincible, this person is invincible. Keisuke can't stop him at all. Before his voice died away, this GTR, which was also painted with flames because of its worship of Takahashi Ryuichi, became a thing of the past. Chapter 253. Now there were only 4 cars left in front of Qin Guang. At the very front was Yuan's Volkswagen. He had performed well today, maintaining first place. Even though his lead over the cars behind him was minuscule, he had protected the local racers' pride. In second place was the expensive McLaren P1, which was a complex of black technology with superior power. Up until now, this car was still the most technologically advanced car in the competition. Apart from that, its driver was also very smart. Unlike Yuan, who had unwillingly fallen to 4th place in the previous round, this guy had deliberately controlled his ranking to 3rd place in the previous round. This was to obtain a position in the 2nd row this round, which would allow him to suppress the matte GTR. Apart from these 2, there was a Subaru Leopard WRXT and a BMW M4 respectively. Just as everyone was looking forward to how the matte GTR would slaughter the 2 cars in front, a sudden change occurred, causing an uproar. The Subaru and BMW actually slowed down their acceleration, and instead adjusted their parking spots, driving side by side. Were they brazenly teaming up to suppress the invincible GTR? This kind of behavior was enough to disqualify or even be banned in a regular competition. But in a gambling competition, there were no written rules about this. This was an underground drag race where both parties wore protective suits and wielded fancy rapiers. Furthermore, they had to compete on a rectangular platform where both parties had to fight back and forth with each other while wearing protective suits and wielding fancy rapiers. Although these two's behavior was shameful, if they couldn't even deal with this kind of situation, how could they become the underground kings worshipped by the unruly racers? 4 years ago, on the same track facing the same situation, Diesel had chosen to explode on the accelerator, turning his Ford GT, which had been completely transformed into a heavy cannon, into a meteorite, crashing into the two rascals in front of him. He had used his American-style violent philosophy to maximize the power of the muscle car, sweeping away the two overconfident stumbling blocks on his road to becoming the king of cars. So what would the Matte GTR do today? F***CK. B***T. Qin Guang was pushed back by the two bastards and tried to pull the inside lane. The two cars decisively cut to the inside lane and pulled towards the outside lane. In the end, the two bastards did not even care about their pride. They would rather lose straight-line speed and pull to the right side. In this kind of two-lane race, it was already very troublesome to have a car in front of them blocking them from overtaking them. With two cars blocking their way, it was simply a trap. Qin Guang changed directions several times, but he was blocked by the two grandsons. Qin Guang was infuriated. "Did you two bitches take my money?" He had not guessed wrongly. The two of them had indeed received money. The driver who had locked his car yesterday promised the two of them that if they could work together to push GTR out of the top 4, he would give them 2 million each. Apart from that, the two of them also knew that they would definitely be defeated by this invincible GTR if they were to compete based on pure strength. Instead of that, they might as well use this dishonest method to force him out of the top 4. This way they would be able to keep their place in the top 4 and get a share of the prize money. They would also be able to get cash from the driver. Why not? Perhaps some people would think that the battle to protect the car had not even begun. Qin Guang wanted to break through the heavy encirclement of the king of cars and successfully win for 7 days in a row. However, to the driver who had a temper and character, "If you make me unhappy, I don't lack money. I can also protect my car so that you won't even be able to enter the battle to protect the car. Bullying a big shot who can't run a corner race. I'll throw money at you." In a regular race, taking money and breaking the rules would, of course, be condemned by everyone and banned from the race. But I'm sorry, this is the racing heaven of the underground world. We only have one rule: the winner takes all. Even if the racers in the BMW M4 and Subaru Leopard WRXD were beaten to death by the kings of cars who had come all the way here to protect the car, it would not change the fact that the GTR had lost its chance to become the king of cars. Then, faced with such a situation, what could the driver of the Matte GTR do? His GTR was not as violent as the Ford GT. Could not be like Diesel, who could forcefully smash through the obstacles on both sides. It was not just the ordinary audience that thought this way. Lu Fei was not any better. Even the kings of cars who had gathered together could not think of how the Matte GTR could break through this situation. Under the lens of the helicopter, the three cars were almost squeezed together. Although the absolute speed of the three cars did not slow down much, a Yuan's Volkswagen and the other McLaren P1, which were running at the very front, still took advantage of the situation and accepted the gifts from the Subaru and BMW. If Qin Guang could not break through the blockade of the two thieves in front, the gap between him and the carefree Volkswagen and McLaren would only continue to widen. "I'm very familiar with this scene," Silver Sparrow citing. A deep and hoarse voice suddenly sounded from behind the kings of cars. Everyone turned to look, only to see a sturdy bald man with a smile on his face slowly walking over. Ferrant moved the fastest. He turned around and walked in the direction of the bald man with a smile. "Uncle Diesel, you're finally here." Diesel extended his fist and hammered Ferrant's chest. "Why, your father is not coming?" Ferrant nodded. "He's not coming. From now on, I will inherit the name of Sonic Shack and continue to be famous throughout the world." Diesel only patted his head. "Kid, the king of cars doesn't recognize who your father is. What you want, you have to rely on yourself to fight for it." Ferrant's face turned red, a hint of unwillingness flashing in his eyes. However, he did not dare to argue with Diesel and could only obediently stand behind Diesel. The others also greeted Dominic Diesel, who had arrived late, with unconcealable fear in their eyes. Diesel also nodded to the crowd and immediately stood in the middle of the crowd, continuing to look up at the huge screen. On the screen, the Matte GTR that had created a legend a few days ago was still being suppressed. He seemed to be at his wit's end. "Being suppressed like this, even Brother Racing God can't do anything, right?" Audiobook said worriedly. Lu Fei did not reply. Although she felt the same way, another thought kept popping up in her mind. In this world, absolutely no one could block his path forward. What would you do? Just as Lu Fei asked silently in her heart, Qin Guang suddenly gave her an answer. This answer came so suddenly without any warning. Qin Guang's jitter flew. Chapter 254. Why was he flying? What was he trying to do? Was he courting death? He was flying out of the track. A huge question mark floated in everyone's mind. Qin Guang's car was flying in the air. Time seemed to have stopped at that moment and everyone's mind went blank. Slowing down time by 10 times, one could see Lu Fei's mouth open wider and wider, and her pupils gradually constricted. The 6 great car kings and the Sonic Sun who had been watching the huge screen calmly, also opened their mouths at the same time. In the distant crowd there was a sudden cry of shock. This mountain track was built along the mountain. On one side was a mountain and on the other was a cliff. Flying out of the track meant falling off the cliff. If you were lucky you might survive, but the probability of dying was much higher than surviving. Mr. X's short and hurried cry of shock came from the loudspeaker. Oh my God! Time was still slowing down. Under the night sky, under the lights, Qin Guang's mat jeter was flying in the air. The wheels were still spinning crazily, and the thick exhaust pipe was spewing exhaust crazily, as though it was pulling out a rainbow in the air. In the car, Qin Guang had a cold smile on his face. You think you can stop me with 2 cars? You're looking down on me, aren't you? I've been waiting for this chance, this V-turn. The mountain track rose and fell along the mountain, generally following the course of going up and then down the mountain. But there were also some steep slopes in the middle of the track. Among them, this V-turn was the most thrilling. On one side there was a sharp turn and at the same time, there was a sharp rise and fall of the slope like a twisted arch bridge. Even if you slowed down to drive past here, there would be a very obvious sense of weightlessness. And the peak of the steep slope happened to be the sharpest corner of the V-turn. Normally, when driving past here you had to control the speed at least 70 kilometers per hour to pass safely. Otherwise, a moment of carelessness would cause the car to fly up and crash into the mountain wall at the sharp V-turn. A car flying in the air could not be controlled no matter how good the driver was. But Qin Guang did not slow down. Instead, just before entering the curve he pulled the car hard into the inner lane, the tires almost pressing against the edge of the drainage ditch. Then he turned around diagonally to the other side and along the slope of the V-turn he suddenly sped up. The slope was too steep. It was at least 30 degrees. Qin Guang rushed out from the tangent of the slope at 160 kilometers per hour. The car was far from the ground and it crossed the guardrail diagonally. The whole car was floating in midair. You want to stop me? I'll fly over now. Let's see how you're going to stop them. The GTR flew farther and higher in the air, and when it finally reached the apex the GTR was already flying. Finally, someone reacted and saw through his intentions. They were even more astonished. What a complete lunatic. Aren't you afraid of death? Are you really not afraid of death? How do you know that you can rush out fast enough? How do you know that this slope is enough for you to fly diagonally to the other side of the bend? Could it be that when you made this decision you already calculated the result? If Qin Guang knew the doubts in these people's hearts he would only chuckle and tell them the truth. Forget it. What the F***ck? I'm not a human computer. I just feel like I can fly over so I just do it. It was all based on intuition. The racing god's intuition is never wrong, okay? I've already done similar things in the racing god's training ground, okay? Of course, Qin Guang knew how much shock his crazy action would cause to the others, but he didn't care at all. He just desperately leaned his body back and relied on the change in his own weight to try to adjust the angle of the car in midair. Although the other side of the bend was the downhill section he needed, the angle was not as steep as the 30 degrees when he took off. He tried to reduce the landing angle as much as possible. It was close to the track itself so that the car would receive the least amount of damage when it landed, and it would obtain the greatest speed. Bang! At this moment, there was a loud noise coming from the car window, and there was suddenly a pool of blood. Faster, see. What the hell? I think I bumped into something. Qin Guang was so scared that he peed his pants. He turned his head and vaguely saw a white shadow about the size of 2 palms flash diagonally behind him, and it went straight down the cliff. Did I just kill a bird? Wait, pigeons? Qin Guang didn't have the time to care about the unlucky pigeon. He quickly turned around and placed the tip of his foot on the gas pedal, focusing all his attention on the road ahead. He did not notice that when the unlucky pigeon was knocked into the sky, the heavenly holy grail that was fixed in the cup holder emitted a faint blood-red light, but it disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Thankfully it was only a pigeon and not a cow. Otherwise I would have fallen. That's not right. Cows can't fly to the sky. I'm not bragging. Just as Qin Guang was thinking about this, the car finally crossed the fence on the opposite track, and the front of the car was slanted towards the road. Thankfully, Qin Guang's car did not twist in midair due to the incline of the road. The front and front wheels touched the ground at almost the same time. Although there was a series of sparks on the ground, the rear wheels landed steadily, and the rear of the car quickly swung towards the mountain wall. The entire car quickly twisted and moved horizontally towards the mountain wall. The right wheel was completely separated from the road by the rebound force. At the same time, the moment the car landed, Qin Guang suddenly hit the gas pedal and his entire body shifted to the right. The rear wheels spun desperately, bringing up billowing smoke and dust. Just as the car was about to cross the drainage ditch and crash into the mountain wall, the power provided by the rear wheels finally pushed the car forward fiercely. A smooth landing. Continue to sprint. Qin Guang's crazy move not only completely overtook the BMW M4 and the Subaru Winged Leopard WXT, but also fiercely closed the distance between him and the McLaren P1 in front of him. In an instant he pounced directly behind the McLaren P1, intending to continue overtaking it at this bend. 3.5 minutes later, the GTR once again disappeared into the darkness, leaving behind everyone who was unable to calm down for a long time. Luffy's mouth was wide open and he still hadn't closed it. Ajia, on the other hand, sat on the ground, his face full of confusion. The bunch of top racers also didn't say a word. They had been in the underground racing world for many years, but they had never seen such a crazy move. The giant screen had already displayed his final result for the day, an average speed of 155.97. At the border of light and shadow, the matte black GTR shone like the sun. In Luffy's mind, she vaguely remembered what Wang Qing had said when he had called to inform her. There were 10 top racers, but he was indeed the only god of racing. He never lied. At that moment her phone rang. It was Qin Guang calling, much faster than the previous 3 days. Luffy thought to herself that he might also be unable to hide his excitement and wanted to share the joy of his success with her. When the call connected, Luffy was slightly choked up. Qin Guang, you did 150 today. Don't say that. The sheet metal of this car isn't expensive, right? I just stopped by the side of the road to take a look. The front of the car is a bit badly damaged and the anti-collision beam is deformed. Damn. Wang Qing's car is so expensive. Don't tell me it'll cost hundreds of thousands to repair? Quick, help me ask Ajia how much it'll cost. The car Wang Qing lent me was damaged, so I'll have to pay for it. Idiot. The point you're focusing on is too strange. Luffy turned to look at Ajia, whose face was full of anticipation. Sister Luffy, what did Brother Racing God say? He must be very excited right now, right? Luffy shook her head numbly. He asked you how much it'll cost to repair the front of the car and the anti-collision beam. Ajia was stunned. Huh. Just like Lu Fei, Ajia also spent a lot of effort to recover from this blow that was like a club to the head. In the end, Ajia comforted himself. Extraordinary people do extraordinary things. Perhaps Brother Racing God's uniqueness was reflected in this seemingly cute trait. That's right. That must be it. After yesterday's painful lesson, this time, Qin Guang didn't run away on the spot. Instead, he planned to follow the Chevrolet back to the track halfway up the mountain. Ajia left first. Just now, Qin Guang had driven the car to the training track for a moment. Tomorrow was the race to protect the car and Ajia had an important task. Not only did he have to repair the damage, but he also had to check the condition of the car as soon as possible. Although Qin Guang's precise control had reduced the impact when the car landed to the minimum after flying such a long distance, he couldn't eliminate the possibility of the car being damaged during the collision. He had to check it to make sure nothing went wrong. Chapter 255. Unlike the previous few days, today after Qin Guang finished his race, he went straight to the stage of locking the car and taking the money. At the same time, he had to determine the method of tomorrow's car protection battle. There had never been a car race like today, where there were 6 car kings and a car king's son in the 4th round. Ryuichi Takahashi and Watan Junyao had long been determined to participate in the first round of the car protection battle, but it was not clear how the 5 people who arrived later would participate. At present, in addition to Ryuichi Takahashi and Watan Junyao, there were 2 other ordinary drivers who had signed up for the first round of the car protection battle. But it was obvious that there were 7 car king level players and there were not enough seats. The 2 people who had signed up before were basically out of the picture. The world's top 10 car kings were generally about the same level. There were 3 people who were recognized as slightly better than the others. One was the new top car king Tommy Diesel. When he won the championship in Hong Kong 4 years ago, he had defeated Ferdinand, the car king of the Rising Sun City, and Felix, the diamond car king of Africa. The other was the eternal car king of New York, Schroeder. So far he had never tasted defeat, but he had not fought with Diesel, so it was hard to say who was stronger and who was weaker. The last person was somewhat similar to Qin Guang, who had been wearing a V-shaped special agent mask these days. He was also a player who always hid behind a mask. 6 years ago he won the championship in Los Angeles with an unstoppable momentum and participated in 3 consecutive car protection battles in the same year. Not only did he suppress several talented newcomers who emerged this year, but he also defeated the Rainforest Car King, Speed, the Japanese Car King, Ryuichi Takahashi, and another Ice Car King. It was not a simple defeat but a big gap. Unlike Qin Guang's V-shaped special agent mask, the man was wearing a very typical Chinese dragon mask, so some people speculated that he was Chinese, but it could not be confirmed. So far only Diesel had come and it was said that Schroeder was on the way. The last dragon-patterned car king's whereabouts were unknown. Diesel discussed with the crowd and quickly came up with a decision. There were currently 4 places in the first round of the car protection battle. In addition to Ryuichi Takahashi and Watan Junyao, it was confirmed that Ferdinand and Frant would participate for the time being. Diesel, Spade, and Felix were prepared to participate in the second round of battle, which might or might not happen. If this Matt Jeter couldn't even pass the first round, then it would be impossible for him to defeat Diesel. Hence, with Diesel's identity, it was reasonable for him to stay until the second round. As for the others, their method of deciding the order was simple as well. They just had to draw cards to see who had the most cards. The winner would go first and the loser would wait for the second round. After all, it was rare for them to move, and seeing that everyone had arrived in such an orderly manner, it was very likely that there wouldn't be a second round after the first round. Naturally, they didn't want to come here for nothing. If Qin Guang, who was rushing back, knew that these car kings were actually worried about not having a second round, he would probably just chuckle and say that they were too naive. Lu Fei got into the car and drove to the parking lot of the finish line. Qin Guang returned to the finish line from the other end. As usual, Qin Guang sat in the off-road vehicle, while Lu Fei chose a car and collected money not far away. In other people's eyes, this was an exceptionally noble and lifelike car race. But for Qin Guang, it was only the prize money and the car that was locked in the garage. When Qin Guang and Lu Fei had met just now, they had decided that since there weren't any particularly valuable high-end cars in the last 4 places, they might as well lock up the brand new Renault Alpine that Renault had sent to show off. The reason was very simple. This car hadn't been released yet, and if it was on the market, it would have a serious negative impact on the company's upcoming promotion and release of their new car. In addition to the loss of reputation, many innovative technologies that they didn't want to be exposed in advance would also be leaked. Renault definitely wouldn't be willing. That was exactly what Qin Guang wanted to take advantage of. Since they had sent their car to participate in this race, no matter what company or how rich they were, they had to abide by the rules of the race. Therefore they would first lock up their new car. Next, they would have to wait for them to come knocking on their door and redeem the car with money that was far higher than its actual value. No, you can't lock this car. In the crowd, a tall, blonde Frenchman shouted angrily, waving his hands as if trying to raise his momentum. Another blonde, blue-eyed driver in a racing suit stood behind this man with an awkward expression, his eyes flashing. He felt a little embarrassed. He was the best driver in France, and he had just won the World Rally Championship in the first half of the year. He had been invited by Renault to participate in the underground racing, and he had originally planned to win in one fell swoop. He didn't expect the rules of the underground racing to be so cruel, the competition to be so fierce, and the opponents to be so strong that it was beyond comprehension. He won the first 3 rounds very easily, but he didn't expect to lose in the last round and in such a tragic way. He didn't even get into the top 4, so much so that his car had to be locked up. For a conceited racer, this was simply trampling on his self-confidence and self-esteem. He had no face left. But this was still not the most embarrassing thing for him. Before coming here, he knew the cruel rules of the car race. He himself didn't care about it. He felt that since he had chosen to participate in the race, of course he had to accept the rules, or else he shouldn't have come. Even if it was just to protect his reputation, he shouldn't try to act shamelessly after losing. But the manager of Renault didn't think so. He felt that this new car contained too much of the company's new technology, so he was determined not to let the car be locked up. This manager was a senior executive of a dignified multinational company, so he decided to act shamelessly in front of everyone. Luffy only held his hand and watched coldly as the Frenchman jumped up and down, not saying a word. No one could act shamelessly in a car race, whether you were a British prince or the prince of an Arab sheik. It was all the same. There was no need for Luffy to say any more nonsense. The organizer of the car race would naturally deal with this matter. Mr. Basile, I'm sorry, we can't satisfy your request. Since the winner has already designated your car, then you must hand over the key. This is the rule of our car race. If you want to violate our rules, then not only will you be going against my Hong Kong car race, but even Count Lafontaine, who presides over the Paris car race, will become your company's enemy. You have to understand the seriousness of this matter. A middle-aged Chinese man stood in front of the angry Frenchman and spoke calmly. This man was able to organize a race of such a scale, and was also able to subdue the rebellious underground drivers. Needless to say, his status was extraordinary and his bearing was even more extraordinary. Chapter 256. The Frenchman's expression suddenly froze. He was a manager who had worked his way up from the technical level. He wasn't very familiar with the rules of the car racing competition, but he knew that the Chinese man in front of him wasn't joking. He wanted to bow his head, but as the highest person in charge of the company, he really didn't want to take on such a heavy responsibility. Qin Guang saw that the situation was getting out of the car, so he decided to get out of the car and see what was going on. Uncle Qing had specifically sent 6 bodyguards to protect him, so he didn't have to worry about anyone pulling off his mask. Well, Qin Guang didn't want to admit it. In fact, his purpose of getting out of the car was very simple. He wanted to stir up trouble and make more money. No, absolutely not. Basile couldn't think of any other way, so he simply grabbed the key from the driver's hand, then sat in the car and locked the window. He was completely acting like a rascal. He couldn't be blamed for doing this. In order to configure a top sports car that could compete in the underground racing world, the company had invested too much key technology into this car. It was even more than the new car they were going to release. Once this prototype fell into someone else's hands, the technical improvement ideas of the company for the next 2 years would be exposed. He was also the one who pushed for this matter. He was a proud technician and he was too eager to find a suitable opportunity to prove his results. He didn't expect to fail miserably in such an easy task. Obviously, even if he were to act shamelessly, they wouldn't let him go so easily. The middle-aged Chinese man gave a look, and someone went up with a hammer, ready to knock on the window and drag the rascal out. Basile had no choice but to roll down the window and yell, "Isn't there a second stage of your car racing competition? If he didn't win the second stage, then this car isn't his, right?" The middle-aged Chinese man smiled and nodded. "That's right. So Mr. Basile, you don't have to be so excited. We're just temporarily locking the car up. If he loses any of the next 3 races, you can still take the car away." Basile couldn't help but be tempted when he heard that. However, he looked at Diesel and the others not far away and he couldn't make up his mind. At this moment, Qin Guang walked over. Over the past few days, his V-shaped special agent team mask had been firmly remembered by everyone. Even if Qin Guang didn't say anything, everyone's eyes gradually shifted to him. Finally, they saw this man many people thought in their hearts. With a height of 1.8 meters, Qin Guang didn't look tall in the crowd, but in the eyes of others, this masked man was growing taller and taller. Even though he did not speak, his aura gradually enveloped the entire area. Even the person in charge of the Hong Kong car gambling competition, who had been calm from beginning to end, could not help but raise his eyebrows and look at Qin Guang with great interest. No one knew what Qin Guang was thinking at this time. Damn it, I just came here to act cool on a whim. Why the hell are all of you looking at me like that? No one would have thought that under Qin Guang's cold expression he was ridiculing them in his heart. Damn it, these people's eyes are so scary, it's like they want to eat me. Should I go back into the car? No. It wasn't easy to come up with an idea to make a lot of money. There won't be another chance like this. Hang in there. Qin Guang. You must hang in there. You are the second officer of the An Royal whose hands are stained with blood. You are the invincible car god. Don't be afraid. I'm not kidding, I've rarely been in an environment like this. Although it's nice to see you guys look at me with admiration, there are too many people looking at me. It's a bit stressful. Wait, what the hell is this unmanned helicopter flying above my head? Qin Guang glanced at it out of the corner of his eye, and his heart was racing. The giant screen was actually a close-up of his face taken by the unmanned helicopter's camera. Forget it, I'll just smile at this time. Therefore, the corner of Qin Guang's mouth slightly curled up. With a faint smile, he walked to the driver's door of the Renault Alpine and slightly lowered his head to look at Basile. Basile also turned his head to look at Qin Guang standing outside. His heart gradually began to beat faster. He didn't want to admit that he was weak, but he felt a terrifying pressure from the masked man. This is the man who, in 4 days, turned the world's underground racing world upside down? If he could really win this time, then there was no doubt that he would be the best car racing man in the world. This was a god who was walking step by step to the top. Suddenly, Qin Guang extended 2 fingers and said in his pure medieval English accent, "I'll give you 2 choices. 1, give me €1,000,000 now and I won't lock the car today. You can drive it away immediately. 2, when I become the car king, you'll have to give me €2,000,000 to take this car away. You decide." After saying that, Qin Guang turned around without another word and went straight back to the off-road vehicle. When he finally sat down, he gently patted his chest and softly said to himself, "Damn, fortunately I have strong mental fortitude. I almost couldn't speak." The driver sitting in front rolled his eyes. "My brother, you call that strong mental fortitude?" Qin Guang left decisively, but he didn't realize how arrogant his words were to Basile. The first choice was fine, but he actually proposed the second choice in public and in the presence of so many car kings. This was clearly telling everyone that he didn't care about these world-famous car kings at all. The veins on Diesel's bald head bulged. Wu Panjuanyao's coquettish face suddenly burst into a smile, looking somewhat sinister. Takahashi Ryuichi snorted coldly. But Frant had already shouted, "Arrogant guy. Tomorrow I'll use my 1200 horsepower monster to make you understand. You're just a condescending bastard." The other car kings didn't react much better, but they weren't as impulsive as this young man Frant. Qin Guang heard Frant's clamor from afar. He stared blankly for a moment before reacting. "Damn, I'm not talking to you, why are you so angry? Oh, didn't I seem a bit too arrogant just now? Forget it, I've already said it, I don't care anymore." After waiting for a while, Lu Fei and Uncle Ching finally got back in the car. "The French looked down on you, he chose you for the second condition. You're really treacherous. The normal landing price of Alpine in China is no more than 2 million RMB, but because of you, it's become 2 million euros. Qin Guang grinned. Serves them right. Wanting to promote mass-produced cars in the underground racing scene was a stupid decision. I just let them pay a little tuition fee. For a multinational company like them, 2 million euros is nothing more than the cost of finding a spokesperson. It's not unbearable. It's better than me selling the car to their competitors, right? Unfortunately, he's not very smart. If it were me, I'd directly choose 1 million euros and drive away now." Lu Fei poked Qin Guang's head. "Others think you might lose, so they bet." Qin Guang laughed. "I like gamblers." Chapter 257. Just as Qin Guang and the others were about to leave, an image suddenly appeared on the giant screen. In the image, another heavy truck was slowly driving into the parking lot of the starting point. Luffy glanced at it and exclaimed, "The German is here. Didn't they say he was rock climbing? Why is he here?" Herman. Who? Schroeder. A flawless racing machine. Leaning back, Qin Guang stretched his waist and asked, "Really? That's getting interesting." Just as he finished speaking, another heavy truck drove over. Luffy suddenly straightened up from the back seat. The parking lot outside was even noisier. Who is this? Qin Guang's interest was finally piqued. The Dragon King of Cars. I think he's also from China. Like you, he likes to wear a mask and never shows his face to others. Before you, he was considered the racer closest to God. Of the top 10 racers in the world, only the Eskimo didn't come. See, this is what you get for running like crazy on the first day. These people are crazy. Luffy's emotions were a little out of control. The appearance of these two people was too unexpected. The people outside also became restless. Although he didn't know much about the King of Cars in the underground racing world, Qin Guang's fighting spirit was gradually aroused. Was he finally going to face the adored opponents of the world? Qin Guang turned his head to look at the two heavy trucks on the giant screen. His eyes flashed fiercely. I have a new idea. It's a crazy idea. Luffy heard the fierceness in his words. She turned to look at him. What do you want to do? Tomorrow we'll settle 3 battles to protect the carriage. Help me contact the organizing committee. As long as they agree, I'll solve all of them in one day. What? Are you crazy? Luffy was shocked. You'll collapse from exhaustion if you run 3 races in a row. They won't agree either. Qin Guang shook his head. I won't collapse. You've never seen me at my limit. As he said this, Qin Guang recalled the scene when he drove the Alto to 400 kilometers per hour in the racing god's training ground. Damn it, this is really unbearable to look back on. If I lose control even a little bit, I won't even have the chance to turn into a meat patty. Instead, I'll be turned into minced meat, the kind that can be used to cook dumplings. Compared to the racing god training ground, the underground racing outside was too gentle. What are you trying to do? Seeing how serious he was, Lu Fei began to seriously consider his request. Since all the top racecar kings are here, the Ice Snow Racecar King doesn't seem to be very powerful. Then let the 9 of them attack together. I was the last to start the race. All 10 cars were racing at the same time. I gave all of them 3 chances. Within these 3 chances, no matter who stole my first place, I would lose the title of Racing King. But if I win, I want to take away all their cars. Impossible. The Racing Kings also have their own pride. They won't agree to such a request. This is an insult to them. Uncle Qing, please help me contact a local racecar king in Xianxia. I will make a trip there now, and then they will definitely agree to my request. If they don't agree, I will choose to withdraw from the race. They will never have the chance to challenge me. If they are really crazy about racing, they won't refuse me. Until Qin Guang got into A Yuan's car, Lu Fei didn't understand where Qin Guang got this crazy confidence. Lu Fei didn't understand Qin Guang's realm at all. In fact, before he made this crazy decision, Qin Guang didn't understand it either. He just wanted to maximize his own benefits. Since there was only one chance in the racing competition, if he wanted to do it, he would make it big, the bigger the better. Later on, others would know that he was just giving away money, so naturally no one would want to gamble with him. Therefore, once he made the decision, Qin Guang understood the reason behind it. A mature racecar king was bound to experience many accidents. The racing field was ever-changing. Normally speaking, there was no such thing as an invincible general. It was a pity that an ordinary racecar king could make many mistakes in his life, and encounter many accidents that weren't fatal. But all it would take was one truly tragic collision, and the racecar king would leave this world forever. Different from others, Qin Guang had died 95 times on the road to becoming the racing god, and there were countless other non-fatal collisions. The experience he had was more than 10 times or 95 times that of others. Since he had decided to stand on this stage and thoroughly show his hard-won skills to the world, if he didn't bring out his true limits, he would be letting down the audience who were infatuated with racing, and even more so, letting down the 95 times he had died in the racing god training field. He was afraid that he wouldn't have such an opportunity to race to his heart's content in the future, so he might as well let this rare opportunity shine to the extreme. He wouldn't leave any regrets for himself, nor would he leave any regrets for others. This was respect for others and respect for himself. He had been too arrogant just now, and since he had already angered the other racecar kings, he might as well add fuel to the fire and push this race to the top. From now on, he would truly stand at the pinnacle of the world's racing industry. Therefore, he used A Yuan's Volkswagen to run an average speed of 163.7 78. Everyone was confused. Today's race had clearly ended and his car had already been sent away. Why was he using someone else's car to break the record of 155? 97, which had been thought to be unsurpassable? Was this guy trying to make all racing enthusiasts lose the courage to continue racing? The blood-red figure of 163. 78 on the giant screen fiercely shocked everyone's eyes. The 9 racecar kings weren't much better off than the others. They all stared at the giant screen dumbfoundedly. Within a day he had switched to another car and broken another record. To him, this dangerous winding mountain road seemed to have become a straight line. What was his purpose in doing this? Was he trying to make everyone give up on protecting their cars? It was undeniable that people like Frant and Ferdinand were in despair when they saw this number. Diesel smiled bitterly and said to the others, "It seems like we shouldn't have come here?" There was silence. Even the Dragon King and Schroeder, who had just gathered, were speechless. Unwillingness surged in the hearts of the 9 racecars. They had been racecar kings for too long and no one had ever looked down on them like this. Their reputations weren't based on bragging. They were all achieved bit by stepping on the blood and tears of countless people in the bitter battles where life and death hung by a thread. No one could deny that they were powerful. But now they felt incomparable disappointment and fear, perhaps mixed with a trace of unavoidable anger. But what use was that? Chapter 258. Today this man had completely belittled everyone with his words. Then he turned around and set a track record that seemed impossible to surpass. He was so unscrupulous. And he was using a car that he had just picked up, not the GTR that he had been using for the past few days. This was downright contempt, but no one present dared to say that they could get close to that terrifying record. It was as if they didn't live in the same world. If he wasn't driving someone else's car, these car kings would even think that he was using technology from the future 100 years later. Then Qin Guang's face with the V Special Agent mask appeared on the giant screen. He had just snatched the seat of the stunned Mr. X. "Hello friends. I'm a GTR racer. You can call me Mr. V. Now I have a great idea to share with you." The V Special Agent mask on the giant screen had a strange smile as he spoke slowly. Everyone held their breath and looked at the giant screen, waiting to hear what he had to say. "Are you going to destroy our last bit of dignity? Tomorrow will be my last day in the racing competition. I know that 8 of the only 10 car kings on Earth are here and one of them is the son of a car king. But that's not important. I'm tired of these pointless challenges. I just want to end this boring race as soon as possible." Qin Guang's voice was extremely cold, arrogant, and annoyed. "I really have to thank this arrogant, cool mask. My acting skills are terrible but I have a mask." Qin Guang thought this in his heart but he continued, "So, I have a good idea to share with you. Tomorrow I plan to race with the 9 of you. There will be 9 cars competing at the same time and I'll start in the last row. I'll give you 3 chances to beat me. If I don't win in any of them I'll be considered a complete failure. If I win 3 times in a row then I want all of your cars. You can choose not to accept it. Then I'll withdraw from the race. This is your last chance to challenge me. You have 30 seconds to consider my request." Qin Guang felt that his lines were excellent, but he was immediately worried. What if this group of people chickened out? Hence he immediately coughed lightly and added, "If I really have to retire from the race with regret, I'll use the GTR to leave an average speed record of more than 170 kilometers per hour. If you're interested you can slowly try it. If there is a day in the future when someone can surpass 170, perhaps I will appear in front of you again." After saying that he began to pray in his heart. "I'm King Cocky. If you guys can still back down I'll stew my own tongue and eat it." As expected, anger quickly overwhelmed despair and fear in the hearts of Schroeder and the others. Although everyone was in despair they had never competed before. They would never admit defeat. He wants everyone's car? Was that important? None of the people who came here cared about money. "Even if you really are a god we will use our actions to let you hear the roar of mortals. We are definitely not the king of cheap cars." At the same time, just as Qin Guang expected, this group of people could become the king of cars because they were the world's most fanatical racing enthusiasts. After waiting for so many years, a godlike opponent had finally appeared. If they couldn't challenge him, they would regret it for the rest of their lives. We accept your conditions. Tomorrow. Fight to the death. In the end, Diesel was chosen as the representative. He stood at the front and roared with his loud voice. More than 60,000 fans roared in excitement and madness in unison on the huge half-mountain racetrack. In the decades since the underground racing was born, there had never been a race that was as worthy of everyone's anticipation as tomorrow. Regardless of whether this crazy Mr. V could create the miracle that he claimed to be tomorrow, he would definitely go down in history. Thousands of kilometers away, Zhou Xian and Lin Jingwei, who had been waiting in front of the computer screen, looked at each other. They had never seen Qin Guang like this, but he was so handsome that it made their hearts beat wildly. Seeing that Qin Guang had finally returned to his car, Lin Jingwei, as the representative chosen by everyone, finally made a call. Qin Guang was just about to brag to Lu Fei when he heard his phone ring. He looked down and saw that it was Lin Jingwei calling. He was extremely puzzled. Brother Guang. You're so King awesome. I really regret dragging Gaoya along to watch the live broadcast. You're going against the heavens. We've been watching the live broadcast of the mountain track. We're all watching you race. The first sentence that Lin Jingwei said made Qin Guang lay burn on the outside and tender on the inside. Damn it, my pretentious appearance was seen by this group of grandsons? Faster thief. I'll definitely be laughed at when I go back, right? But from his tone it didn't seem like it. On the other side, Sun Xiaoxuan had already grabbed the phone and said loudly, Qin Guang, don't be like this. It's very dangerous. How can you compare yourself to others like this? I'm sorry, I couldn't help but tell Lin Jingwei. I didn't know he could get a live broadcast signal. Then the phone was snatched away by Xiong. Brother Guang, no matter what, you'll always be my boss. Bai Nyangzi's voice came again. I'm King in love with you, Brother Guang. Then it was Gaoya. I'm in love with you too. On the other side, Lin Jingwei's screams could be heard. No. Then it was Zhou Jingxi. No matter what, you must be safe. I'm in love with you too. Qin Guang, I want to have your babies. Sun Xiaoxuan actually threw caution to the wind, but she sounded like she was joking. Perhaps she really wanted to take advantage of this strange time to say something abnormal. I want to have your babies too. Gaoyu was provoking Lin Jingwei again. Qin Guang couldn't help but laugh out loud. Sure enough, the way he acted was too cool just now. The people on the other side were already abnormal. When I go back, I must watch the video. That way I can be awakened by my own handsomeness every day. Don't be infatuated with me. I'm a living legend. Let me tell you, you don't know how fast my heart was beating when I was talking just now. I was so nervous. Luckily I was wearing a mask. Otherwise you could all see that my face was completely pale. Don't be fooled by my domineering and handsome appearance. I'm actually panicking inside. It's just like when I was in primary school and hosted Children's Day. My heart would pound when I thought of tens of thousands of people listening to me. Qin Guang patted his chest as he spoke with lingering fear. He could finally relax. If he didn't find the right opportunity to say these words, he really wouldn't be able to calm down. The people on the other side of the phone, Lu Fei and Uncle Qing in the car, and the driver who was looking at Qin Guang with a face full of admiration were all stunned. This grandson's style had changed again. Chapter 259. It was late at night. In her pajamas, Lu Fei paced back and forth anxiously in the living room of the suite. She had been back to the hotel for about 2 hours, and Qin Guang had already closed the door and gone to bed an hour ago. Lu Fei had been struggling until now. She had plucked up the courage to knock on Qin Guang's door several times, but she eventually put her hand down. Although Qin Guang was very confident in himself, Lu Fei still couldn't calm down at the thought of him participating in such a crazy race the next day. If he really succeeded, he would really become a god from then on. But if he failed, well, failure in the ordinary sense was not unacceptable. But Lu Fei was afraid that he would die in the race the next day. So Lu Fei told herself that no matter what, shouldn't she at least leave one more memory with him today? Or perhaps it could be said to be a real encouragement to him. But in the end, after pacing around for nearly half an hour, Lu Fei returned to her room. It wasn't that she had changed her mind, but she knew that the race the next day was too important. Since Qin Guang hadn't brought it up himself, Perhaps it was because a man's essence energy would affect his racing condition. She couldn't seduce him after such a time. If she really did it with him the whole night, wouldn't it be a huge sin for him to compete with dark circles under his eyes the next day? It seems like it's not just my first time. He also said that he was an old virgin. If he got greedy, he would definitely ask for it again and again, right? At least that was what was written in the books. So Lu Fei decided that she had to believe in him. Since she chose to believe in his success, she would leave the most precious reward for his triumphant return. Unfortunately, Lu Fei didn't know that Qin Guang was currently facing the computer, looking at the treasures he had just collected and chuckling. An action movie to his heart's content, 4 layers of super absorbent toilet paper, a beautiful trash can and a manly 3-piece suit. Nothing could be missing. He had no choice. He had already transferred 4 million to Old Man. The 4-fold recovery soup was waiting for him in the 5 capitals. Old Man Guang was terrified at the thought of that thing. If something really happened to it, he would definitely have a nosebleed as he walked, right? Safety first. Allow the old man to masturbate first. Around 6 o'clock in the afternoon, the track was already packed with people. Every parking lot's capacity had reached its limit. Not only could they not park their cars, but even people could barely find a place to stand. Nearly 120,000 people crowded into each parking lot. Because of this special competition, too many people had set off overnight and crossed the ocean to get here. At that moment, Qin Guang wasn't at the mid-mountain racetrack. Instead, he was at Jie's modification factory. After Qin Guang had decided on such a crazy match yesterday, Jie hadn't slept a wink until now. He felt that his responsibility was too great, and it was about to exceed the limits of what his heart could bear. At this time, Qin Guang was pointing at the hood and making another request, which made him even more reluctant to agree. Brother Racing God, this isn't too good, right? These 2 turbochargers were originally prepared for the straight-line acceleration race. They couldn't be used in the bends. It's very easy to get into trouble. Jie struggled to speak. Qin Guang shook his head. That guy called Farant said his car has 1,200 horsepower. Although I don't know how much horsepower the other car kings have, and it doesn't mean that the more horsepower a car has, the better the car's performance is. But since I've already boasted, I have to win cleanly. So, turn on these 2 turbochargers for me. I want 1,000 horsepower. Jie still refused to agree. Qin Guang grinned. I know you're worried about me, but you're worrying too much. The reason I'm making this request is because I know I can definitely control it. Although I'm crazy, I'm not reckless. Lu Fei stood on the side. In fact, she wanted to persuade Qin Guang like Jie, but she knew that since Qin Guang had already made up his mind, nothing she said would work. In the end, Jie proposed a compromise, which was to add an extra switch in the car. Qin Guang could decide whether to turn on the 2 turbochargers or not. Under the premise of ensuring performance stability, Qin Guang agreed to Jie's proposal. When it was 7:30, Qin Guang and the others finally set off for the mountain track. If it weren't for Qin Guang's iconic mat guitar opening the way, the people in front of them blocking the mountainside would have made way when they saw them coming. Almost none of them would have been able to get to the starting point parking lot before 8 o'clock. Along the way, Lu Fei kept turning her head to look at Qin Guang from time to time. Why do you always look at me like I want to say something? Just say what you want to say. Qin Guang took the initiative to speak. Lu Fei shook her head fiercely. No, nothing. She thought to herself, how could I say something like that? I can't tell you before the race starts that if you win today, I'll sleep with you. Right? Please help me book a ticket back to Wujing tonight. Can I book it now? Qin Guang suddenly said. Lu Fei was stunned. Huh? You're leaving tonight? Qin Guang took a deep breath. Yeah, I've been away from Wujing for a few days. My mom's going to have surgery the day after tomorrow, so it's good to go back early to accompany her. I'm just worried that all the cars in today's live auction won't be sold out. Excluding the Renault car, there are still 12 other cars. From your tone, it sounds like you're already treating other people's cars as if they're already yours. Even though she had seen this guy's confidence in racing, Lu Fei was still intoxicated by his nonchalant attitude, treating other people purely as cash machines. Qin Guang nodded heavily. That's right. From the moment they agreed to my request, their cars were no longer theirs. Right, where's the car's CD? Can I play music through Bluetooth? I plan to play some exciting songs for myself during the race later. Play music. Lu Fei helped him connect his phone to the Bluetooth and looked at him strangely. Qin Guang nodded. Yeah, when I was learning to drive, there was always music to accompany me. I listened to some songs to refresh myself, and it could be considered as getting back to the feeling I had when I was learning to drive. He didn't finish his sentence. There was music in the Racing God training ground, but it was all annoying 8-bit game soundtrack. But what he said was true. To bring out the best, of course, he had to completely restore the environment at that time. When the team finally drove slowly into the parking lot, there was almost no space in the parking lot of more than 40,000 people. Fortunately, the race organizers had reserved a corner of the parking lot for them. Otherwise, Lu Fei and the others wouldn't even have a place to park their cars. Completely different from the previous days, there was no sign of chaos on the mountain track today. On the contrary, it was filled with an extremely solemn atmosphere. Even if someone spoke, they tried to keep their voice down. Chapter 260. Among the tens of thousands of people spoke in low voices at the same time, filling the huge parking lot with a buzzing sound, which sounded like the dull roar of the sea before a storm. The 9 top racers had already parked their cars in front of the starting line in advance. After Qin Guang left yesterday, the 9 racers competed in advance to determine the ranking. The rules of their competition were very simple. The one with the fastest speed in a single lap would be ranked last today. Qin Guang had his arrogance, and these top racers also had their dignity. No matter how desperate they were, they would never admit defeat in advance. Even if it was just to make themselves lose a little more dignified, the 9 racers did their best in yesterday's fight, only hoping to be closer to the matte GTR when they set off. Finally, the matte GTR appeared on the aerial image of the aircraft on the giant screen. It's here. In an instant, the buzzing sound in the crowd stopped abruptly, and the parking lot of tens of thousands of people became silent without warning. Everyone's eyes turned in unison, either looking at the team from afar, or staring blankly at the giant screen. No matter whether it was a successful man in a suit, a punk man and woman in a metal leather jacket, or a racer who had just poked his head out of his car, no one was an exception. Today, no matter what the final result was, at least when this man appeared on the scene, he created a huge psychological pressure on everyone. It was the same for the other 3 parking lots on the mountain track. Qin Guang didn't even need to say a word. When these people thought of what he was going to do here today, they would subconsciously push him to the altar in their hearts. Although I don't want to admit it, my heart is beating faster. Wu Pan Junyao, who grabbed the 5th position, turned his head and said to Ryuichi Takahashi next to him. Ryuichi Takahashi's face was not very good. In yesterday's competition, he actually lost to Wu Pan Junyao and only got the 4th position. Humph. Arrogant guy. Although it is undeniable that he is very strong, he will definitely pay for his excessive insolence. In any case, he can fight all of us with his own strength, which is enough to make him a real legend. Diesel's mentality was much better than others, and he said with a smile. But if he loses, then he will become a joke. Farant, who was in the distance, was still unconvinced. The German, Schroeder, sat next to his number 7 car with a cold expression and said nothing. Before today, his undefeatable legend had been broken. He had lost to Diesel and the Dragon Mark Chariot King consecutively, which had left him in a bad mood. The man with the dragon-patterned mask sat in his number 9 blue racing car. Beneath the mask, his eyes appeared exceptionally indifferent. In the previous night's qualifying race, he had gone all out to get the 9th position. He would be starting next to the black GTR. He wanted to prove that he was the strongest racer tonight. Only by competing side by side with that person and defeating him fair and square would the world be unable to refute him. Thinking back to 6 years ago, didn't he suddenly fade out of the racing world because he felt that he was invincible? Now that a tyrannical opponent had finally appeared, what a thing to be excited and ecstatic about. He didn't know what others were thinking at this time, but in any case, Qin Guang was very annoyed. Originally, he had been thinking about Lu Fei's advancement benefits today. According to the previous steps, it seemed that he should directly put his hand into her collar today. Just thinking about it made him look forward to it. But why are so many of you staring at me? What's the meaning of that unmanned helicopter flying around my car? Can you guys give me some F*** privacy? The answer to him was, of course, no. Knowing what he was thinking, Lu Fei giggled and patted his shoulder, saying, "Don't look so sad. I know what you want. I'll say it here today. If you can really create a legend tonight, then it's not impossible for me to go crazy with you. Anyway, sooner or later won't I have to give it to someone? I think you're quite pleasing to the eye. Although you're a little poor, I quite like you." After that, Lu Fei got out of the car. Before Lu Fei got out of the car, Qin Guang said to her, "Then I thank you for your liking. Lu Fei, you have to remember everything that happened today. I can say very responsibly that this must be the most gorgeous racing you will ever see in your life. Even if another 50 years pass, even if the car manufacturing technology is developed for another 50 years, no one can reproduce what I did today." Lu Fei looked back, blinked, smiled, and then turned to leave. Watching her figure gradually disappear into the crowd, Qin Guang happily clenched his fist and thought, "Let's do it tonight." However, he quickly shook his head. It was obviously impossible today. After dealing with these rascals, he had to go back to the 5 capitals. But it didn't matter. Lu Fei wouldn't grow wings and fly. She was his meat. It didn't matter if he ate earlier or later. Although he couldn't take advantage of Lu Fei, the girl standing at the starting line today was really good. She was even more beautiful than the previous 4 days. Qin Guang shook his head and thought, "I didn't see it wrong, right? This woman looks a bit familiar. She seems to be the woman who just won the top 3 of Hong Kong's Miss competition. Do your family know that you are so bold and unrestrained? Do your fans know? Aren't you afraid that today's photos will be posted on the internet?" Qin Guang thought like this. In fact, he didn't know that many celebrities nowadays, especially newcomers, would do anything in order to be famous and promoted. Not to mention being the girl at the starting line of the car racing competition, it was common for them to deliberately expose themselves in public. What's more, through this car racing competition, these new stars might even be able to get the appreciation of the car racing competition's organizers. Qin Guang rubbed his eyes and stared at the girl in front of him. Finally, another gunshot was heard. A bright light flashed in the distance. The battle to protect the car in the Hong Kong car racing competition, which was called the top battle by many car fans, officially began. Qin Guang scolded the girl in front of him in his heart for not being professional and actually wearing a nipple pad. He stepped on the accelerator fiercely and pulled the horn of his final battle. If someone was sitting in his co-driver's seat at this time, they would be surprised to find that his left hand had disappeared. It didn't really disappear, but the movement was too fast and too strange, to the point that the naked eye couldn't even catch the trace of his left hand. In addition, his legs were in a state of fog. It was also an overly intense operation, making his legs difficult to be captured by the light and shadow. In the first stage of the car racing competition, no matter which round of the competition, the difference between the strong and the weak was very obvious at the beginning. However, there was almost no difference between the 10 cars that appeared on the track at the same time. Even if there was a difference, it was extremely subtle. Everyone was clearly sprinting forward, but from the perspective of the camera, these 10 cars were relatively still. Until they were about to cut into the first corner, Ferdinand, who occupied the first position, suddenly pulled the body of the Aston Martin Zagato to the inside line, and the 10 cars that were relatively still finally moved violently. When Ferdinand, who was in front, was about to enter the corner, Qin Guang's eyes narrowed. "It's time. Today's task is very difficult. I'll go all out from the beginning." Chapter 261. So, let's start with some background music. Qin Guang's left hand moved quickly and pressed the play button on his phone. Bon Jovi's "It's My Life" suddenly sounded. Along with the prelude, Qin Guang gently placed his left hand's finger on the supercharger switch that Jia had prepared. 1,000 horsepower. Go. For a racer like Frant, although his car's horsepower was as high as 1,200, it was impossible for him to maximize the power on the winding and rugged mountain track of Xianxia's middle mountain track. The 1,200 horsepower monster's power could only help him in accelerating in a straight line. But in order to obtain this excessive power, he also made the car too heavy. The two cancelled each other out, so his acceleration ability might not be much better than Qin Guang's lightweight GTR. Different from these people, the biggest change after Qin Guang unlocked the 1,000 horsepower was not just a simple increase in power, but also his true limit. On this mountain path, the previous 800 horsepower was like a sprinter sprinting on an empty stomach. Other people only increased the horsepower on straights, and even when entering corners, it would become more difficult to control the speed. But for Qin Guang, it was an overall improvement of the car's performance. It was only at this moment that the performance of this car was truly worthy of his ability. Of course, in the past 4 days he chose to suppress himself, not to deliberately show off, but to continuously improve his muscle memory after switching the left steering wheel to the right. Today he had finally found his true racing god state. Speed up. Crazy speed up. Even when facing the king of cars he still goes crazy. Mr. X roared at the top of his lungs. Qin Guang stared straight ahead, no longer paying attention to his left and right. He had already pulled to the center line at 163 kilometers per hour. At the first corner he was going to forcefully attack the Dragon Car King next to him, using a bug-like 163 kilometers per hour. If it was an opponent like He Tianzhao at this moment, perhaps he would consider forcefully pressuring the outside, forcing Qin Guang to slow down or go further out, which could even make his car lose control and fly off the cliff. However, the dignity of the Chariot King made him choose to fight fair and square, and he was defeated. Halfway through the bend, Qin Guang continued to press forward. He was still on the outside, and his next target was Diesel's Ford GT. The veins on Diesel's bald head were bulging. His right hand, which was gripping the steering wheel, was about to shatter it. His right foot was trying to step on the accelerator, forcing the car's horsepower to explode. His left hand was controlling the gear lever and the handbrake, while his left foot was constantly stepping on the clutch, controlling the car's turning and drifting. But it was no use. Like a black meteor, Qin Guang's GTR surpassed him in the blink of an eye. Just like the song said, "It's my life. This is my life." And it's nowhere never seize the moment. The opportunity is fleeting. Today was Qin Guang's chance to change his life. He was going to use his invincible ability to firmly grasp everything he wanted in his hands. Everyone's speed was very fast, far surpassing the peak performance of the previous 4 days. But still, no one could stop the murderous Qin Guang. Felix persisted all the way to the second half of the downhill section, but he was still ruthlessly overtaken by Qin Guang. When he finished the whole course at an average speed of 167 kilometers per hour, the 9 top car kings who were gradually catching up were left with nothing but despair. Qin Guang stopped in the parking lot at the finish line and quietly waited for them. When they all arrived, Qin Guang rolled down the window. "I know that the 3 of you are the best, but your stupidity is that you still treat me as an opponent on the same level as you. You still have 2 chances." With that, Qin Guang started the car and returned to the starting point along the mountain road. No one had expected that 9 top experts of the king grade would be defeated in such a straightforward manner, and in such a miserable manner. Their pride and aloofness made it impossible for them to use underhanded tricks like the other ordinary racers. Even their initial ranking was based on the so-called spirit of chivalry. Just as Ruffy had expected in the first round of the race to protect the car, their performance was even worse than the ordinary racers from before. "Bastard! That detestable bastard!" Ferrant jumped out of the car and roared angrily. He waved his hands and viciously kicked the wheel of his car. He had come with the glory of the Shaq family and started from the 3rd seat in the second row, but in the end he couldn't even last the first half of the race. But he wasn't the one who had suffered the most. It was the dragon-patterned car king Diesel and Schroeder. The others had more or less experienced failure once or twice, but the 3 of them had practically never been defeated until now. What made them feel even more despair was that they clearly knew that if they still had 2 chances to challenge him, they would probably end up with the same result for the rest of their lives if they still didn't make any changes like the one they just lost. "Everyone, I'm sorry. Can you give me the first seat in the next round?" No one had thought that the first to make this decision would be the Germans, who were famous for being inflexible and stubborn. When Schroeder said this, he didn't look ashamed at all. Instead, he looked relieved. Yes, this was the only way he could think of to win. It was the only way. Spade shook his head in pain. "Schroeder. I'm sorry, we're too weak." He understood Schroeder's mentality. No one looked down on the Germans at this time. Instead, they were all secretly ashamed. In order to protect the dignity of the car kings, this German had let go of his aloofness. Even if he didn't have the spirit of chivalry, as long as he could win once, he wouldn't mind being mocked by the world after today. Diesel also stood up. That's right, Felix. Can you give me the second seat? We can't lose again. Just then the Japanese Ryuichi Takahashi suddenly walked over with a dejected look. Everyone, I choose to withdraw. I'm not qualified to participate in the next round. I can't continue to drive the GTR in front of him. Everyone was silent again. They could understand the feeling of a proud Japanese like Ryuichi Takahashi being severely defeated by another person driving his favorite car. It was really too hard to bear. I also announce my withdrawal. This was originally a competition for 8 people. If I continue to stay on the field, it will only affect your performance. The Englishman Ferdinand also shook his head in disappointment. He remembered his bold words before he came here, saying that Xianxia was still ruled by the British Empire in the racing field, but now it had become a joke. After adjusting their moods, the other 7 people who chose to continue the competition slowly drove back along the mountain road with a determined state of mind. The car kings have compromised on the ranking. When all the cars lined up on the starting line again, Mr. X exclaimed. This change caught him and all the other racing fans off guard. They were no longer fixated on their initial rankings. This proved that these racing kings had completely admitted one thing, and that was that the opponents they were about to face were indeed more tyrannical than they could bear. Here were the 9 people who were recognized as the best in the world at racing. Only the Dragon Pattern King stubbornly chose to line up with him at the back. Schroeder and Diesel had been at the forefront from the beginning. Chapter 262. Luffy couldn't believe what she was seeing. She turned to ask Wuxia, "Are my eyes playing tricks on me?" With Diesel and Schroeder's skills, if the 2 of them were at the front from the beginning, then their advantage would be too great. The others can't interfere with them at all. Wuxia rubbed his eyes. Sister Luffy, you're not seeing things. They did move to the front. The other thing is that the Japanese and the British seem to have withdrawn from the race. What a bunch of despicable guys. This isn't fair. Luffy said indignantly. Wuxia bit the bullet and denied Luffy's words. I don't think so. The rules of the race were proposed by Brother Racing God. As the challenger, the other side accepted his almost humiliating rules. Of course, they have the right to decide the order of the race. I don't think it's unfair. Instead, I think Brother Racing God is bullying a group of opponents who are still using cold weapons with a Gatling gun. We're not on the same level at all. This is really unfair. She didn't expect Wuxia to hit the nail on the head. Luffy nodded approvingly. Although that's the case, I really don't know how he can win this time. Have you forgotten? So far, Brother Racing God has never used a certain thing. The NOS system? That's right. Are you crazy? This is a curve race. If he accelerates with nitrogen, he'll definitely fly off the track. Didn't he already fly off the track once? If it were someone else competing, of course I wouldn't think so. But if it's him, no matter what he does now, I won't be surprised. In the afternoon, I was still saying that 1,000 horsepower would definitely go out of control, but in the last race he exploded the horsepower from the beginning. The more Wuxia said this, the more Luffy felt that it was possible. Although she knew that Qin Guang was invincible in the car, Luffy still ran towards the track. She planned to persuade Qin Guang not to touch that damn thing. Just as she took a step forward, the starting gun on the other side had already been fired. The second duel had begun. He was a step too late. In the chariot, Qin Guang could also see the changes in his opponents. The dragon pattern chariot king beside him was still reserved, but the other 2 had completely put down their airs. But what did that matter? Charge. The Mat Jeter once again let out the loudest roar at the beginning of the game. It was a roar that made people despair. With Qin Guang's desire to change his fate. Ruthlessly, like a bolt of lightning, he rushed out. The car shook violently and the exhaust pipe let out an explosive sound. The rear of the car dragged out a long trail of white smoke like a jet. At this moment, the roar of the GTR's engine drowned out the exclamations of the audience and all the other vehicles that were roaring and charging forward. Simple plans take my hand sounded in Qin Guang's ear. The Mat Jeter transformed into a dragon, drifting like the wind on the straight road as it roared forward. This lunatic. The moment he took off, he used the nitrogen acceleration. A complete lunatic. Lu Fei's body went limp and she sat on the ground, staring blankly at everything that was happening on the giant screen. Not only was Lu Fei stunned, but the exclamations of the people at the halfway point of the track were also coming one after another. Although the NOS system had been famous for a long time, it had always been used in straight-line acceleration races. There had never been anyone like this guy who turned on the NOS system at the corner of a cliff. Hiss hiss hiss. Thousands of kilometers away, in Zhou Jingxi's office in the Jianhuan school building, Lin Jingwei's gasps did not stop for even a second. He widened his eyes and muttered, "This lunatic, is he trying to scare me to death? What's wrong? What's going on?" He used the liquid nitrogen to accelerate at the corner. I've seen a reckless racer do this before. 30 seconds later, that guy and his car were smashed into powder on the 8-lane road in Yanjing. Brother Guang, this guy. With just a brief explanation from Lin Jingwei, the others knew how dangerous it was. If there was someone by Qin Guang's side, everyone would probably stop him. But there were no ifs in this world, so no one could stop him from charging forward. Qin Guang's enemy had always been him. Even Diesel and Schroeder, who were already at the front, could not stop him for more than half the track. When Qin Guang's car turned into a stream of light and passed by the two of them, he had not even reached the bottom of the slope. But he still did not stop his crazy actions, and the music in the car changed from Take My Hand to The Phoenix by Fall Out Boy. The GTR, which was clearly painted with black matte paint, was extremely dazzling at this moment. Everyone could see that this guy was trying to break a new record. He wanted to create an unprecedented record that belonged only to him in this race. The arc-shaped black lightning left his legend at every corner of the track. It was so strange that ordinary people could not understand the terrifying high-speed corners, as if it was mocking all the golden rules that all racers believed in. At this moment, Lu Fei finally understood why Qin Guang said that this was the last time he raced in his life, and also why he said that this was the most gorgeous racing he had ever seen in his life. No one could stop him. No one could get close. Even looking up at it would make one's head spin. He had never regarded anyone as an opponent from the very beginning. Today he didn't want to beat anyone else, he just wanted to keep beating himself. After today, no one in this world would dare to challenge him in the field of racing. He wanted to use his world-shocking talent to leave a thick and heavy stroke in this world that could not be erased. The hot blood of a racer finally surged in his heart, and he defeated his previous worries. At this moment, Lu Fei understood Qin Guang's loneliness in his invincibility. She stood up fiercely and raised her hands high. Her face was flushed and her eyes were bloodshot. Facing the huge screen, she screamed in a shrill voice, "Charge!" Diesel, Schroeder, Dragon King, Wupan Junyao, Falanti, Speed and Felix, these 7 people had already stopped racing forward. Instead they parked their cars in the parking lot halfway along the track, and turned their heads to look at the GTR that had turned into a streak of light and shadow on the mountain road. His exhaust continuously spewed out flames, and the sound of his throttle could be heard throughout the entire mountain. It was so fast that it was incomprehensible. The natural moat had become a passageway, and the curve seemed to have been pulled into a straight line by him. As expected, he has never regarded us as opponents. What he wants to surpass is the limit of human beings. Dragon King finally spoke, and there was no longer any unwillingness in his voice, only worship. Qin Guang couldn't describe his current mood. He had even completely forgotten the purpose of this trip. He only coldly opened his eyes wide, staring at the rapidly retreating mountain wall and guardrail, as well as the road that seemed to have become a part of his body. Fast. Even faster. Faster than the limit. I want to reach my limit, reach the limit of this car, reach the limit of this track, reach the limit of this world. 6 minutes and 8 seconds. His average speed was 175.99. Chapter 263. When Qin Guang's car stopped more than 300 meters behind the finish line, smoke billowing out of it, he rushed out of the car in a disheveled state. The 2 numbers were slapped hard on the huge screen. This was a speed that most people on the planet could not run at on the highway, but he had left it on the mountain track. Wang Qing's GTR, which was worth tens of millions, was scrapped. Qin Guang only had time to save his heavenly holy grail and mobile phone before he watched the billowing smoke from the engine compartment turn into a monstrous fire. The searchlight on the helicopter shone directly on Qin Guang's body, and the high-speed camera gradually zoomed in from a distance. On the screen, Qin Guang's figure standing next to the burning GTR grew larger and larger until the camera finally stopped on his V-shaped special agent mask. Qin Guang turned his head and looked at the camera in the sky. For some reason, the corner of his mouth curled up into a smile. He then stretched out his left hand and made an OK gesture. The more than 100,000 spectators were jubilant. His car is gone. There's no need for the next race. We admit defeat, Schroeder said with a smile. Schroeder said with a smile. He shook his head over and over again with a look of relief on his face. If I wasn't the only son in my family, I would really want to become a woman and marry him. Wu Pan Junyao said. The Dragon King had already turned around and left. His era was completely over. No, the era of all racing was over. From today onwards, all the racing people in the world would forever live in the shadow of this man. In addition, the so-called world's top racers in formal competitions would not be spared. Lu Fei was already sitting in the third helicopter provided by the organizing committee. She just wanted to get to the parking lot at the finish line as soon as possible. On the other side, Qin Guang went alone to the rest area provided by the organizing committee. Even though the bodyguards sent by Uncle Qing had not yet approached and the security personnel of the organizing committee were on their way, none of the fans tried to touch his mask. They even involuntarily moved aside as he walked forward. These people's feelings were extremely complicated. They could not tell whether it was fear or admiration, just like in the legends when humans saw God for the first time. The two emotions of respect and fear mixed together. This was called awe. Congratulations. From today onwards, you are the 11th king of cars in this world. The organizer of the Hong Kong car gambling competition, the middle-aged Chinese, stood in front of Qin Guang with a proud smile and said, "Did the others withdraw from the competition?" Qin Guang raised his eyelids and asked. The middle-aged Chinese man nodded. Yes. Qin Guang smiled. It's pretty good. However, I have to correct you. I'm not the 11th racing king. I'm the one and only racing god. That's right. You are the god of racing. Let's cheer together. Racing god. The great god of racing. The unsurpassable racing god. The middle-aged Chinese man was taken aback at first, but he quickly reacted and shouted loudly. Speed god. The great god of racing. In the 4 parking lots of the half-hill racetrack, 120,000 people screamed in unison. Lu Fei, who was sitting in the helicopter passing through the parking lot, smiled brightly. She also shouted along with the middle-aged Chinese man on the screen. Although I really want to say that this guy is shameless, I still have to shout, Racing God. Lin Jingwei slammed the table. Not going to Xianxia with him was the biggest mistake of my life. Listening to the tsunami-like cheers that resounded through the entire mountain, the smile on Qin Guang's face became brighter and brighter. Even the V-shaped special agent mask couldn't hide his joy. A total cash prize of 34 million. 12 top-notch luxury cars with an average value of more than 10 million. 2 million euros from Renault. Got it. It was easy to say, but if he hadn't stepped onto this stage at the right time, how could he have gotten it if he really risked his life and galloped to his heart's content? Happy. Let the old man drink some water to calm himself down. Kid. Congratulations. At this moment, Lu Li's voice suddenly sounded in his heart, pulling Qin Guang from the dreamlike state of mind of the racing god into an even more dreamy situation. When Qin Guang came back to his senses, he had already appeared in the world in the cup. Caught off guard by Lu Li, Qin Guang jumped back fiercely while covering his face with his hands, making a defensive posture. He shouted, "Let's talk nicely. Don't touch me. For the sake of our friendship." After waiting for a short while and seeing no movement, Qin Guang felt at ease. He recalled the images of this woman appearing in his mind several times before. It seemed that she had not put on any clothes so far and was completely wrapped in the white mist. Yes, this woman was still naked. It was a sure win. Don't panic. Then why was I pulled in this time? Qin Guang's mind turned quickly and he suddenly reacted and exclaimed, "No way? The world of punishment is coming? So fast. Why don't you give me a break?" Lu Li's figure gradually condensed in front of him. Sure enough, she was still wrapped in the thick white mist and only her head was exposed. She glared at Qin Guang angrily. Can't you be a little more brave? Look at your cowardly look, I really don't want to talk to you. Not the world of punishment. Qin Guang was relieved. Then what was it? Did this woman miss me? Did she fall in love with me? To be honest, although she was indeed so beautiful that she did not look like a woman in the mortal world, like a fairy. Well, she was the goddess empress, but at her age the old man always felt a little bit like being gnawed by a fossil cow. There was a touch of sadness in the old man's heart. Shrugging his shoulders, Qin Guang replied, Didn't I get oversensitive because of you and the realm within a cup? How can you blame me for that? Why did you drag me in all of a sudden? Lu Li blinked at Qin Guang and said as if presenting a treasure, Look around carefully, don't you find any changes? Qin Guang turned his head and looked around at the cloud-like world in the cup. He was shocked when he saw it. On the sea of clouds behind Lu Li there was actually a car parked. What the hell? Lu Li asked from behind Qin Guang. How do you feel? She was very satisfied with Qin Guang's inexplicable surprised expression. After running forward for a long time until he stood under the giant G, Qin Guang decisively went all out and ridiculed. Why the hell is the jeter I drove outside here? And it's so big. It's at least 7 stories high. Do you want me to turn into a mutant giant who can drive this car on the sea of clouds? Aren't you bored? Why don't you knock on the wheel with your hand and touch this car? In the face of Qin Guang's crazy ridicule, Lu Li showed great patience today. She didn't make a move but still stayed in the same place and said to Qin Guang in the distance with a smile. Qin Guang turned around in confusion and kicked the wheel hard. It hurts. Chapter 264. This stupid wheel was actually as hard as a rock. After passing the test, Qin Guang pounced on the side of the wheel and touched it. It was cold to the touch and he knocked it with his finger. It was indeed a pure rock. This is a sculpture. What's the point of having such a huge sculpture? Qin Guang didn't understand. Take a closer look. Look around, look at the sea of clouds. Use your heart to feel the changes in your surroundings. Lily reminded him again. Only then did Qin Guang become serious. He collected his thoughts and looked around and indeed found something strange. Countless faintly discernible silk threads floated over from the endless void in the distance. They were as soft as flying cotton, like the countless tentacles of a transparent jellyfish. One end was connected to the car sculpture, and the other end extended into the endless void. On the ground, Qin Guang originally thought that it was just white fog. Only when he bent down to take a closer look did he realize that what was continuously extending up from the ground were also silk threads. If he didn't squint his eyes and look carefully, he wouldn't be able to tell it all. But once he realized the existence of these things, Qin Guang only felt goosebumps all over his body. He thought of the stinky tofu covered in white mold that had just been distributed at home. Resisting the discomfort, he reached out to fiddle with the densely packed white silk threads. His fingers brushed past them without any hindrance, as if he hadn't touched anything. When he blew out a breath, these silk threads were like silk floating in the air, swaying along with the airflow. His fingers couldn't touch them, so they were illusory. If he could move them by blowing, then they weren't completely illusory. And they definitely weren't mist. What the hell was this thing? Alright, I'll tell you a great piece of good news. You've finally fulfilled the hidden condition of the heavenly Holy Grail. When Qin Guang was almost dizzy from all this, Lily was finally willing to turn on the commentator mode. What hidden condition? Just from the sound of it, it sounded really powerful. What does it have to do with this stupid sculpture? Qin Guang decisively turned on the 100,000 wise mode. In the field of racing, you've become known as the strongest person on this earth. And then the third world within a cup that you experienced, the racing god training ground, would be considered complete. This huge statue is the symbol of the racing god training ground. At the same time, it has other important uses. Can you say it all at once? From now on, everyone in this world who loves racing will worship you as a god. These people's faith in you, even if they're separated by oceans, will condense invisibly to you. In order to make it easier for you to understand, let's temporarily call it the power of faith. The Holy Grail can absorb the power of faith attached to your body and use it to recover my divine power, as well as speed up the operation of the Holy Grail itself. This means that the world in the cup will come faster in the future. The frequency was even higher. The speed of the heavenly Holy Grail's cultivation would also be faster. The statue you are looking at right now is the statue of the god of racing training ground. These seemingly real and illusory white threads are the power of faith that is materialized in the world in the cup. Qin Guang had a blank look on his face. Sounds awesome, but it's not scientific. There are only a few 100,000 people watching today's racing competition. Perhaps there are people watching the live broadcast from other places, but I estimate that there are at most 1 million people. If according to what you said, everyone's so-called power of faith represents a thread, then there are at most a few million of them. Even if I can't count them clearly just by guessing, I think the number of threads here is definitely more than 100 million. Lu Li chuckled and said proudly, "This is the true power of the heavenly Holy Grail. Just as you said and saw, there are indeed billions of threads of power of faith here. That's about 98% of the total population on Earth. Why are there so many? On your Earth, as long as someone knows about driving, they will produce power of faith. All of them will be absorbed by the heavenly Holy Grail. Perhaps these people didn't witness the process of you becoming the racing god with their own eyes. Even if their power of faith is weaker or a lot weaker, it still exists." Qin Guang expressed his surprise. "There's no reason for that. They don't even know me, so why would they worship me? And they can continue to supply power of faith to me?" Lu Li chuckled again. "What do you know? You're now recognized as the world's strongest racer, no one can deny that. Whether it's the professional racers or the underground racers you've just defeated, no one dares to challenge you anymore. There's no doubt about your strength. Even if they don't know what happened today, even if they don't know you at all, in their hearts at some point in time, they must have inadvertently imagined who is the world's fastest driver. They will fantasize in their minds about how amazing that person is and so on. As long as humans occasionally think about who can drive faster in their lives, because of the latent pursuit of speed, they will worship the person who drives faster or is the fastest. Even if this worship will eventually be forgotten with the passage of time, deep in their minds, in a corner that they themselves have completely forgotten, this memory still exists. The faint worship in their hearts towards the world's strongest racer, no matter how weak it is, will never disappear from the moment it was born. It's just like a rootless duckweed floating outside without a place to settle down. Who is the world's fastest man? No one has ever been able to give an accurate answer to this question. Even the world's F1 legend Schumacher has lost many races. However, ever since you've proven yourself in this car racing competition, there's a well-deserved answer to this unresolved question. You don't need everyone to acknowledge you because it's an objective fact that you're the strongest. Just like the sun in the sky, no one can see it at night, but no one can deny that it's always there. That's why the ownerless power of faith that's drifting all over the place will all come to you. Become the power of the heavenly Holy Grail in me. So that's how it is. No wonder there are billions of power of faith here. According to Lu Li, in today's world, unless it's a primitive tribe that is especially uninformed, who wouldn't know about cars? Who can guarantee that they haven't thought about the question of who can drive faster in their lives? Even if it's just a passenger in a car, when they see their car overtaking or being overtaken by someone else, they will occasionally have a thought in their mind. Am I faster in this car or someone else's car? Have these people's thoughts become power of faith? Qin Guang looked at the power of faith on the ground with rapt attention, and very quickly saw the difference. The extremely thick power of faith was most likely provided by the audience that had witnessed him becoming the racing god today. One of the power of faith actually gave him a sense of familiarity. But what was even more ridiculous was its thickness. The thinnest of other people's power of faith was as thin as silk, but the one in front of him was as thick as a King thigh. Whose is this? How much do you worship me? Chapter 265. This is the power of faith of the leather-clad beauty Lu Fei, who has been racing with you for the past few days. Lily explained in time. Her thoughts are in it, so you find it familiar. This woman has completely taken you for a god. Qin Guang was overjoyed. Then according to what you said, I can make her do anything now? Lily rolled her eyes. You can try. At least before she is freed from her racing fanatic emotions, she can't resist any of your requests. Why do you want to sleep with her? No, 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 how could I think of such a vulgar thing? Money is fundamental. With money, what girl can't I get? I want her to make me rich. Qin Guang looked at Liu Li disdainfully. You short-sighted god at the bottom of a well. Scram. Idiot. Destined to be alone. What the hell do you know? Qin Guang cursed and found another one which was actually about the same thickness as Lu Fei's. Who the F***ck is this? That damn sissy from Thailand Wu Panjuanyao's. What the F***ck? No wonder that damn sissy kept wandering around me before I drank the water. No kidding, the old man began to panic. I must stay away from this guy later. There was also a very thick power of faith. Liu Li didn't explain further, but Qin Guang didn't need to think to know that these must be provided by the audience. In addition, there was a relatively thick power of faith. Qin Guang speculated that it might be from some professional racers or racing-related people. Racers who like to watch racing programs must have a much stronger power of faith than ordinary people. As for the largest quantity of silk and even the nano-level below silk, it must be the world's most common people. Can this power of faith be upgraded? How about I go and participate in some world-class competition? Liu Li shook her head. No, when the racing god training field was perfected, the power of faith was already fixed. No matter how you display your ability, it will be of no use. Kieske, you don't even have this little ability to upgrade and you call yourself a divine artifact. You're really weak. Qin Guang expressed his disdain. Do you think the world in a cup is a cabbage in your house? You can do whatever you want. It involves profound godly power and laws that even I don't understand. Don't be fooled by the fact that it's just a grand perfection stage driving god training ground. If a mortal god from the god realm could comprehend the changes that happened in that instant, they would instantly rise by countless levels, reaching the heavens in a single step. It can almost reach the level of a god emperor. You bastard, you're still pretending to be innocent after getting a bargain. Qin Guang chuckled. Alright. It's fine if I can't level up. Anyway, other than racing, the English I learned in the Sea of Sudden, my Dota and pencil sharpening skills are also very good. If I can be recognized as the best in the world, I can also have that so-called faith energy, right? Liu Li nodded. Indeed. Every world in a cup is divided into two parts. The first part is when you complete the test in the world in a cup. The second part is when you gain recognition in the real world and obtain the power of faith from others who worship you as a god. Qin Guang sighed heavily. Why did you only tell me such an important thing now? If I knew earlier, I would have gone to play professional Dota. I already said it's a hidden condition. Because of the restrictions of the Heavenly Holy Grail, I couldn't take the initiative to tell you. When the Heavenly Holy Grail chooses a savior, it wouldn't want someone who has no ambition. This is also a test for you. You have to first prove your ambition before the Heavenly Holy Grail will truly recognize you. If you have to fight for everything when others force you to do it, then what's the use of having you? You have to have your own subjective initiative. Now, I'm very happy to tell you that you've passed. Damn, she's even subjective initiative now. How many things has this woman seen recently that she shouldn't have? Could a god emperor be brainwashed by Marxism-Leninism? Damn, if such a thing really happened, Marx in the underworld would also die without regrets. With a rough idea in his heart, Qin Guang asked again. In the past, I've read in some fantasy novels that if a person wants to become a god, they must gather the power of faith to achieve godhood. The so-called power of faith in the Heavenly Holy Grail sounds the same as the power of faith in those novels, right? Liu Li shook her head. You believe in those nonsense? You can become a god just by gathering some believers? Then do you think that those Sakymunis and Jesus Christ in your world have really become gods? Don't tell me they haven't. Liu Li laughed and shook her head. If they're dead, then they're dead. How can the dead become gods? The reason why I said it's the power of faith is just to make it easier for you to understand. It's not as simple as the so-called power of faith in those nonsense novels that you've read. You can understand it as everyone in this world has an invisible spiritual connection with the Heavenly Holy Grail. The thoughts in these people's minds can become the power that the Heavenly Holy Grail transforms. So, Earthlings are so powerful. They're that powerful. Then the universe is so big. Why aren't there aliens who worship me? I'm not convinced. I want extraterrestrial fans too. I'm not happy with only a few billion fans. Little brat, you're quite creative. If there's really some unlucky extraterrestrial that accidentally comes to Earth and is within the radiation range of the heavenly Holy Grail, it will indeed provide you with the power of faith. Qin Guang spread his hands. What you mean is that a dignified artifact's radiation range is only the size of Earth. So weak, okay? As for how big the universe is, Hawking will tell you. Shut up. Isn't this because you're too much of a scammer? If you can upgrade the heavenly Holy Grail to the 9th level of Beyond Heaven, of course you can envelop this whatever universe. What I gave you is an artifact that can grow. But you're still in the novice village of Jianling Tian. A generation of artifact in your hands is a crude wooden stick with an attack power of 1 to 2. You have the cheek to say that it's weak? The 9th level of Beyond Heaven. Qin Guang rolled his eyes again. Another lifetime series. After finally clarifying the matter, Qin Guang changed the topic. By the way, can we change the statue? I'm a dignified Chinese after all. This time it was Wang Qing who gave me the GTR. It's not like I chose it myself. It won't be good if this gets out, right? Lily snapped her fingers. Regarding the appearance, you have 2 choices. One is the Alto you in the Racing God training ground. The other is the GTR you drive when you're at the perfect level. Which one do you want? The Alto. I have feelings for the Alto. Anyway, it's just for show. Lily nodded. As you wish. Before she finished speaking, the originally cool God of War GTR statue instantly turned into a 7-story tall Alto. Qin Guang looked at the new statue and nodded in satisfaction. Not bad, it has the effect of being old. The degree of restoration is really high. Even the cracks on the headlight glass look so realistic. So this was how the Alto looked from the outside. Thinking back to when he drove this crappy thing to 400 kilometers per hour, it was really touching. Going around to the side to take a look, Qin Guang exclaimed, "Damn it! The degree of restoration is so high. Can't you give me a whole car? This is still a F** king half a car. I can't accept this style. I'll change back to the GTR. Lily, sorry, you only have one chance to choose. There's no other way." Qin Guang turned his head to look at the half Alto for a long time. Thinking about it, the artistic feel of a half car is much better than a new sports car. It's not unacceptable. The AQ spirit had always been so useful. Chapter 266. Qin Guang was a bit puzzled. According to Azure, there were 3,000 worlds in the Holy Grail, and it was one of the top 10 godly weapons in the Endless God Realm. The world that Earth was in was just the weakest of the weakest worlds under the Endless God Realm. Why was the so-called power of faith in the minds of some mortals able to accelerate the operation of the heavenly Holy Grail? Earthlings were actually so awesome. I've always felt that Earthlings were an inferior race with backward technology in the universe. My worldview has been flipped upside down. Speaking of which, from what Azure said, there really are aliens in the universe. I actually know such a big secret. So humans aren't alone. Qin Guang fell into a reverie. This feeling of suddenly finding a companion was pretty good. Am I finally going to be the first man in the world to verify the existence of aliens? You ignorant wretches. My God Emperor said. There really are aliens. I'll go get a Nobel Prize in biology. That's what I decided. Forget it, no matter what Azure said was great news. I really have to think about how to prove the other 3 abilities. God of English? Okay, pretend I didn't think about it. Can I prove something like this? Someone said Li Yong? I only have 2 words, hee. God of pencil sharpening? This feeling is barely possible. I'll find a chance to go on TV, participate in Guinness or something, and perform my pencil sharpening skills in front of everyone. But there aren't many non-humans in this world that can worship the god of pencil sharpening, right? When the time comes, the input and output might not be proportional. After expending so much effort, he only managed to attract the power of faith from a few idiots. This was too depressing. I'll bet 50 cents that there are no more than 10,000 people in this world who will think about who is the best man at sharpening pencils. 1,000? There should be at least 100. I'm not very confident either. Just thinking about it makes me sad. Dota level. It's time to stand up and save Sean's glory. My mission is calling. Dota isn't just a game that exists alone. Although dogs and pigs are irreconcilable, if I can prove my undeniable dominance in the field of Dota, A large number of people will more or less acknowledge the fact that I'm the strongest esports player in history. Then should I buy a team or build one myself? Just thinking about it makes me excited. After all, I already have hundreds of millions in assets. Just as Qin Guang was letting his imagination run wild, he suddenly realized something. Danglua. F***ck me, if I meet this nemesis, will I be able to act cool happily? Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you. Due to the completion of the racing god training field, the power of faith is constantly pouring in, and the preparation of the world in a cup has been greatly advanced. So, I can probably tell you in advance that the world of punishment that you want is coming soon. Qin Guang was dumbfounded. Faster thief. It won't affect my mom's surgery, right? Lily shook her head. That won't happen. The power of destiny is changing your mother's fate, so no matter how fast the realm of punishment is, it will have to wait until your mother's operation is complete. Qin Guang heaved a sigh of relief. I'm relieved. Lu Li gloomily looked at him and said, I advise you not to take it lightly. Let me tell you something in advance. This time the punishment world is beyond your imagination. Beyond my imagination? Were they going to eat him? Don't scare me, Qin Guang said as he walked in Liuli's direction. No kidding, he had been scared by Liuli's alarmist talk. Liuli looked at him with a mischievous smile. I'm not scaring you, it's a big surprise. Then you have to help me. By the way, didn't you say that the power of faith can replenish your divine power? You haven't even put on that lustrous feather robe, so where did your divine power go? Do you also need to consume divine power to surf the internet? Qin Guang finally realized that something was wrong. As he spoke, he calmly continued to approach Liuli. From the moment he had entered the world in a cup until now, this woman had only been facing him. Apart from that, she had been moving in a small area, as if she was deliberately hiding something behind her. On the other side, Liuli's face was red as if her secret had been seen through. She was thinking about how to fool Qin Guang. Suddenly, Qin Guang took a step forward and rushed to her side. He took another step forward and turned his head to look behind Liuli. Faster thief. What the F***ck am I seeing? A computer? And it's a top-notch water cooling mod set. Am I F***king seeing things? Sennhei HD 800 headphones. Barry 2 earphones. Asus Faith keyboard and mouse set. Huiwei M3 deluxe set. F***ck, this is inhumanly rich. Speaking of which, isn't this the world in a cup? Why the hell am I seeing these strange things? Qin Guang continued sprinting forward and finally stood behind Liuli before she could react. Then he turned his head around and looked back. 2 white buttocks. Smooth, streamlined, fair back, and those 2 long legs. Oh my god. How perfect. I understand now. No wonder this woman kept complaining that she didn't have enough spiritual energy and couldn't recover. She actually spent that precious divine power on a bunch of luxurious suits. Not only that, she could only produce half of the white fog on her body. Even the fried eggs were only half cooked. Even if she had to save and save, she had to ensure that she could go online. What kind of stubborn netizens are these? Bastard. Lily finally realized that she was exposed and screamed. Before she finished speaking, Qin Guang only felt a fist coming from afar and instantly blasted in front of him. F***ck, this punch was worth it. After being blasted into the air by the fist, Qin Guang returned to the modern world. At this time the cup was still by his mouth and it seemed that less than 0.1 second had passed in the outside world. When he opened his eyes, he saw Wu Pan Junyao swaying around him. Qin Guang quietly stretched out a foot and tripped this butterfly-like buddy's foot. The handsome and beautiful Dark Knight temptress of the generation, Mr. Wu Pan Junyao, who was one of the top 10 underground car kings in the world, screamed and fell off the podium. This damn sissy worships me so much. F***ck, this guy's power of faith seems to be a bit thicker than Lu Fei's. How terrifying. The following car auction and the big gift from Renault, Qin Guang didn't have much interest in it. He left it all to Lu Fei to handle. When he thought of the unimaginable punishment realm that Lily said at the end, he really felt a little uneasy. There was no need to say more about the power of fate. It forcibly solved the problem of the kidney source on the spot. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a miracle. Then there was no need to think about how terrifying the punishment realm would be. What was even more helpless was that until now, Lioli hadn't revealed any information. forcibly creating a sense of mystery, forcibly preventing people from living a peaceful life. Chapter 267. The auction of a total of 12 cars was extraordinarily smooth. In less than half an hour, all of them were swept clean on the spot. Schroeder, Diesel and the others lost everything, but these car kings all wanted to buy their cars back, and the prices they offered were more straightforward than the last. The rich and overbearing Frant even doubled the price of his car. The other car kings did not encounter such a crazy competition like Frant, and at most they only raised the original price by 1.5 times. They bought their cars back on the one hand because they were all their favorite things, and on the other hand, they felt that this car had witnessed the birth of a generation's god of racing, and it had an extraordinary commemorative significance. In addition, Qin Guang's act of becoming a god also caused the price of the previous 3 cars to soar. All in all, the 12 cars that participated in the auction sold for an average price of 13 million yuan. A total of 156 million yuan was entered into the account. Coupled with the 2 million euros sent by Renault, which was equivalent to 14.69 million yuan, and the total prize money of the competition of 34 million yuan, Qin Guang's crazy act of becoming a god instantly exploded, earning 246.69 million yuan. It was more than twice as much as the 70 million that Lu Fei had originally thought. Qin Guang became a rich man overnight, and he was not inferior to those who bought the lottery and won the jackpot. Qin Guang did not stay here to continue to enjoy the worship of others. It was meaningless. Anyway, no matter how much he shouted, the power of faith that could be obtained from the heavenly Holy Grail had already been fixed. At this time it was already 9:30 in the evening, and the last flight from Xianxia to Wujing was at 10:40, so he had to rush to the airport as soon as possible. It was indeed worry-free to have Lu Fei's help in everything. Long before the start of the competition, she had found the person in charge of the Asia-Pacific region of the UBS Bank. When the competition ended and the auction began, Qin Guang's personal UBS account was completely settled. Excluding the 7 million yuan that had been transferred before, the 197.69 million yuan in Qin Guang's bank card was all deposited on the spot. Qin Guang's hand trembled again, and he decisively transferred 10 million to Wang Qing, leaving only 187.69 million on the card. Even if he burned someone else's car into an iron shell, the insurance company wouldn't pay for it. Since the money in his hands was still warm, he wouldn't feel the heartache if he paid for it. It was better to return it quickly. In addition, UBS was known as the safest personal bank in the world, but Qin Guang always had a feeling that his money had been targeted by Lu Li. God knows what this emperor god was planning to do, and he felt completely insecure. Even the safest Swiss bank would not be able to deal with Azure's spying. Alas, when he thought of Lioli and looked down at the UBS black card in his hand, Qin Guang really couldn't feel happy at all. God bless me, don't let me lose all of my money. That's not right either. The heavens might not be as influential as Lioli. They might not be able to protect me, so I felt sorry for myself. If I remember correctly, when I'm using my phone, that woman can only watch videos, chat and browse Weibo to read articles, right? That computer must have been freshly made by her using the power of faith. While talking to me, she's secretly playing with her computer. She's quite hardworking. Speaking of which, when I glanced at the monitor just now, it seemed to be a very familiar game interface. It vaguely looked like Dota 2. Faster see. This woman, she just made a computer and she's already using my phone's 4G to connect to Dota 2. I'm done for. A serious internet addict and a super addicted gamer wants to be my financial butler? My waist hurts so much. Forget it. Because of Lioli, the old man became a god and became a millionaire. Then because of her, he would lose everything. That was not something she could not accept. But thinking about it, if I worked myself to death only to end up empty-handed, how can I stop her? How can I stop her? Sitting in the car on the way to the airport, Qin Guang's heart was filled with melancholy. He didn't feel the joy of making a fortune, only endless pain in his balls. When he thought about the upcoming punishment realm, Qin Guang felt even more uneasy. Seeing his troubled look, Lu Fei said, "What's wrong? Are you worried about your mother's surgery?" Qin Guang sighed in his heart again. That's right, this was the third thing, and it was also the thing that he felt the most uneasy about. No matter how confident he seemed on the surface, the kidney transplant was a major surgery among major surgeries. Before the dust settled, it was impossible for him to calm down. He had been out for 5 days and he didn't know if his father had been so worried that he had a nervous breakdown. His mother hadn't seen him for 5 days in a row, and the surgery was approaching, so she must be even more uneasy. Although he had been on the phone often, he only reported the good news and nothing bad. His parents also said that their health was improving, and the success rate of the surgery was almost 100%. Tang Ying was also full of good news. But after all, he didn't see it with his own eyes, so he couldn't calm down. Fortunately, I can finally go back. I'll arrive in Beijing tomorrow afternoon, and then I'll give them a big surprise. Qin Guang nodded and said, "Yeah." Lu Fei suddenly sighed and hugged him from the side. She said, "Don't put too much pressure on yourself, there's no point in worrying. You have to believe in the current medical technology. Since there's no problem with the kidney, the surgery has a high chance of success. I heard that you found the famous Professor Lu." Qin Guang nodded and said, "That's him. Then it's in the bag. Come on, give me a smile," Lu Fei said as she held Qin Guang's face with both hands and forced him to look at her. Squeezing out a smile on Qin Guang's face, Lu Fei abruptly moved her face over and gave a peck on his lips. Shortly after, she let go and pointed at Qin Guang, who had a blushing face, and giggled. Originally, she planned to resolve the last regret in her heart today. However, it seemed like Qin Guang didn't really realize this. At the same time, it was obvious that he was most worried about his mother's condition. As the saying went, a mother worried about her son. At this moment, Qin Guang's family wasn't the only one worrying about him. He himself had flown a few thousand miles and changed his fate with his insane actions. At the same time, he also changed the fate of his family. Now that he had just escaped from the emotional turmoil, it was normal for him to worry about his mother, who was thousands of miles away. No matter how much money one had, it couldn't be compared to the life of one's parents. If money was gone, one could earn it back. If money couldn't be earned back, one could earn enough to spend. However, if the life of one's loved one was gone, even if one bought half of the world, one couldn't buy the life of one's loved one back from heaven. After laughing for a long time, Lu Fei hugged Qin Guang again and didn't say a word. These past few days she had experienced ups and downs with this big boy. She watched him appear like a comet and conquer the entire world in 5 days. All beauties loved heroes, and Lu Fei was no exception. Not to mention that she was a crazy racing fan, so of course she would fall in love with the world's strongest racing god. But now Lu Fei had seen through the weak side of this big boy's heart. His originally invulnerable godlike image suddenly came alive. A god who had fallen to the mortal world was much more charming than a god who stood high above. Lu Fei's strong feelings of worship, which had no foundation, gradually fell to the ground. Not only did it not weaken, it took root and sprouted. The physical distance between them didn't seem that important anymore. I just want my heart to be closer to him. There's no need to rush things between men and women. Hugging Qin Guang and feeling Qin Guang's body temperature, Lu Fei thought so. Is it comfortable to pinch? Okay, this guy's perfect image was broken again. It's okay. It's very elastic and really round. Can I put my hand in? Stinky pervert. I've really seen through you. Can't you be more mature? How could I fall in love with a loser like you? Can't we learn from the tall, rich and handsome guys on TV and play some high and mighty tricks? Qin Guang scratched his head with one hand and continued to take advantage of her with the other. I'm just thinking that I'm about to get on the plane. After I arrive in Wujing, I have to rush to the hospital. I don't have many chances, so I want to hurry. Besides, there's a very important part missing today. Lu Fei blushed and looked at him with a burning gaze. Can you be more shameless? This car has a lot of space. Why don't we shake it on the road? That's possible. You really King believed it. I'll strangle you to death. Rubber machine gun. Hit 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 hit. I'll kill you. Chapter 268. Lu Fei's rampage continued until they were almost at the airport. It seemed that she also knew that after returning to Wujing, she could no longer play with Qin Guang as she did now. When Lu Fei got out of the car, her face was red. After taking 2 steps, her legs became weak and she almost fell. Qin Guang quickly supported her from the side. Be careful not to fall. Lu Fei turned around and stepped on him fiercely. It's all your fault. Qin Guang awkwardly chuckled as he felt puzzled in his heart. On the way from the mountain track to here, he didn't know what was going on. Maybe it was his super weak self-control as an old bachelor, or maybe it was Lu Fei's excessive indulgence. In short, the two of them laughed and played in the car. When Qin Guang came to his senses, his hand was already in a strange position that he shouldn't have touched. He himself was at a loss. In his impression, he was not such a daring person at all. Why did he do such a beastly thing when he was with Lu Fei? Or rather, why did he do such a thing that was worse than a beast? Because of her indulgence, I became unscrupulous and awakened courage and courage? From now on, I will embark on the road of a generation of dirty kings? After thinking about it, no. I feel that I haven't changed. What was I thinking at that time? Was I testing her tolerance little by little and then a little bit more? Seems like it. Qin Guang had never been a saint. In the face of Lu Fei's indulgence and deliberate seduction, he couldn't resist at all. Along the way, Lu Fei was also enchanted. She thought that there was a partition between the front and back seats of the business car arranged by Uncle Cheng. Even if the back seat was noisy, the driver in the front seat would not know anything, so she was even more presumptuous. In this enclosed space, it was not easy for the two people who had poor self-control not to take the last step. However, when the two of them got out of the car together and were blown by the cold wind outside, their minds suddenly became sober. Recalling what had happened in the car, the woman felt a little embarrassed, but the man was secretly worried that he had gone too far and would lose a close friend like Lu Fei. Qin Guang was a little scared. He didn't understand women very well, and he didn't know if he and Lu Fei were friends or something else. Although she admires my driving skills, her other identity is that of a strong woman managing a large company. She won't always be my brainless fan, right? In the future, will she also realize that something is wrong and secretly decide to distance herself from me in the future? Qin Guang began to worry about personal gains and losses again. He always felt that everything that had happened in the past few days was too surreal. Whether it was the 180 million in his UBS account or the inexplicable strange relationship between him and Lu Fei, they were all so strange. As he was about to board the plane back to Wujing, these problems and situations suddenly rushed into his head, making him feel at a loss, and his brain wasn't enough. These days, Lu Fei put down her own affairs and did her best to help him. Qin Guang certainly knew her kindness and was grateful to her. But why did it become like this unknowingly? He didn't want to lose such a forthright and generous friend like Lu Fei, who could help him do everything properly, but he couldn't control his wretched heart as an old virgin. Of course, he knew that for a girl his performance seemed to be completely unworthy of being a good friend, and he should be kept at a respectful distance. But knowing in his heart didn't mean that he could control himself. I'm really a terrible friend. What are you thinking about? As the two of them walked into the airport, Lu Fei asked when she noticed Qin Guang's absent-minded expression. Qin Guang took a deep breath. Yes. Lu Fei suddenly covered his mouth with her hand. Do you want to say sorry to me? Qin Guang's face turned red and he nodded slightly. Lu Fei slapped him hard on the shoulder. Hey. It's just a small matter. Is it worth a generation's god of racing to be so indecisive? I haven't said anything and you're already tangled up. Qin Guang was puzzled. You're not angry? Lu Fei rolled her eyes. Are you stupid? If I'm really angry, I shouldn't be angry at you, I should be angry at myself. If I don't agree, you can still use force, right? Hey, although I've never been in a relationship, I'm not a virgin like you. Is your understanding of women in the negative? He was seen through. Qin Guang covered his face, pretending to be pretentious in the car for 10,000 years, but it couldn't change the tragic fact that he was an old bachelor. So what if I don't understand women? You've really helped me a lot these few days, but As he spoke, Qin Guang sighed slightly, and his face showed an ashamed expression and he felt a little regretful. Lu Fei blinked at him and her eyes became brighter. Until now, she suddenly realized that this god of racing that she had always admired was actually a university student in his 20s, and he was younger than her by more than 4 years. Looks like my seducing him has left a shadow in his heart. No, I have to cure him. She patted Qin Guang's head again. What nonsense are you thinking about? Am I such a fussy person? I understand your mentality. I know you treat me as a real friend and you care about me a lot. You're afraid that I'll alienate you because of this, right? Qin Guang nodded. Yeah. You're looking down on me. If you weren't younger than me by more than 4 years, I would definitely be angry if you dared to think like this. However, seeing that you're still a little brother, I understand your thoughts. I'm also too lazy to promise you anything. Anyway, a little boy like you just likes to think nonsense. Even if I say it, you'll feel that it's hard to fathom a person's mind. Maybe if I say this today, I won't think the same tomorrow or something. You'll also think that if I say that the things that happened these few days are over, and we'll just be normal friends from now on, and that men and women shouldn't touch each other, you'll be disappointed again. It's not easy to find a great beauty that I can take advantage of, and she's gone just like that. My heart hurts. Lu Fei was indeed Lu Fei. Her words completely exposed Qin Guang's current mentality. Qin Guang's mouth was wide open, and he felt like he had been completely seen through. What the f***c? Lu Fei suddenly laughed and she rocked back and forth with laughter. You're really cute and innocent. Why don't you think about what kind of person I am? Who can you deceive with your little tricks? She realized that she was liking this guy more and more. Qin Guang sighed. I feel so weak. I'm not a match for you at all. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.